Chapter 3947. The entrance to the sect hall was a spacious place where a few people were standing. These people all had identity tokens hanging from their waists. They were the identity tokens of the Chunyang School's disciples. On his way to the Chunyang School yesterday, he noticed that although the identity tokens of the Chunyang School's disciples were different because of their different identities and statuses, there were still some similarities. For example, there was a Tai Chi pattern in the four corners of the identity tokens. Even Zhen Pingfan's identity token of the Jingshu Elder was no exception. Elder Zhao Lu. As Zhao Lu came in with Duan Ling Tian, many people recognized him and greeted him or saluted him. At the same time, some people's eyes fell on Duan Ling Tian at the right time, and their eyes flashed with curiosity. Who is this man? Elder Zhao Lu is leading the way for him in person. He doesn't have the identity token of the Chunyang School's disciple, so he shouldn't be a disciple of the Chunyang School. Yesterday, I heard that Elder Qin Weiyang of Yunfeng brought back Duan Ling Tian, who has recently become famous in Tunglung Province from the Tianlong clan. If I'm not mistaken, it's him. Duan Ling Tian? The one with the cultivation of a lower divine emperor from the Tianlong clan who killed two middle-level divine emperors who tried to kill him? It's him. I remember. I saw the floating image pearl of him killing the two middle-level divine emperors. Although his appearance was not very clear in the floating image pearl, his figure and clothes are the same. He is Duan Ling Tian. Duan Ling Tian did not expect that a newcomer like him would cause a sensation in the sect hall as soon as he followed Zhao Lu into the sect hall. More and more people gathered around, looking at him and pointing at him as if they were watching a monkey show. Duan Ling Tian didn't feel anything about this, and his expression was as calm as before. However, Zhao Lu's expression did not look too good. I'm here to bring Duan Ling Tian to complete the procedures to enter the sect. If there's nothing important, stop nagging here. After all, this was Elder Ling Su. Zhao Lu's words were still useful. After a while, the crowd dispersed one after another, but most of them were still looking at Duan Ling Tian from the corner of their eyes. After that, everything went smoothly. Under the leadership of Zhao Lu, after the school affairs hall confirmed the identity of Duan Ling Tian, they processed the procedures for him to enter the school. At the same time, Duan Ling Tian also received his Chunyang School disciple identity token. Of course, it was just the identity token of an ordinary disciple of Chunyang School. The disciples of Chunyang School and Chunyang School were divided into ordinary disciples and true disciples. Among the ordinary disciples, there were not only gods and god kings, but also god emperors. Their identity tokens showed that they were disciples of the spirit realm, disciples of the king realm, disciples of the emperor realm. As for the descendants of the higher-ups of Chunyang School who had not yet become gods, they were not considered disciples of Chunyang School. Only when they became gods could they officially enter Chunyang School. Until then, they were only considered family members of Chunyang School's disciples. Moreover, Chunyang School was very strict with its management of family members. Only those who were god emperors and above were qualified to have their family members stay in Chunyang School, and they had to be immediate family members. As for those who were god emperors and above, they were qualified to have their family members stay in Chunyang School, regardless of whether they were immediate family members or collateral relatives. They could even have their friends stay in Chunyang School for a long time. This was the privilege of god emperors in Chunyang School. As for the true disciples, they were all divine emperors, and they were all outstanding figures among their peers. Being a true disciple did not only depend on one's cultivation. There were different criteria for becoming a true disciple, such as god emperors. However, not every disciple of a god emperor could become a true disciple. Age and strength were also important. Lan Shilin, for example, had just become a lower god emperor and participated in the true disciple assessment, but he had failed. It was only a few hundred years later that he barely passed. The older one was, the harder the true disciple assessment would be. The difficulty of the true disciple assessment was based on the difficulty level. This was also the reason why Zhao Lu felt Duan Ling Tian would definitely pass the true martial disciples assessment. Duan Ling Tian. Just as Duan Ling Tian received his identity token and completed the procedures to enter the Chunyang School and was about to leave with Zhao Lu, they were stopped by someone. The person who stopped them was a middle-aged man of medium build who was a little fat. He was led by two people with a bright smile on his face and a pair of small eyes that gave him a shifty look. Behind the middle-aged man was another young man, who was clearly his junior. "What are you doing, Huang Feng?" Zhao Lu asked as he glanced at the man in front of him. At this moment, Duan Ling Tian noticed that the middle-aged man also had the identity token of an elder Ling Su hanging from his waist. He was also a higher god emperor. Junior brother Zhao Lu, why do you ask when you already know the answer? The middle-aged man called Huang Feng grinned. I'm here on my grandmaster's instructions. Why don't you ask him? Zhao Lu's expression darkened at Huang Feng's words, but he did not say anything else. This Huang Feng was Elder Ling Su of another branch of the Pure Yang sect. He was also the grand disciple of the only divine emperor of his branch. Although his strength was not as strong as Elder Ling Su, he had a protective Elder Ling Su. Elder Ling Su was the strongest person in the Chunyang school below the God Emperor level. What's more, Huang Feng had a grandmaster, Elder Jingshu, who was in charge of the branch. Duan Lingtian. Huang Feng smiled at Duan Lingtian when he saw Zhao Lu keeping quiet. He said in a clear voice, I'm Huang Feng from the Jade Sun branch. I'm here on the orders of my grandmaster, Qiyu Yang, to invite you to join the Jade Sun branch. My grand ancestor said that as long as you, Duan Lingtian, are willing to join the Jade Sun progeny, he'll take you as his direct disciple. At that time, many spirit void elders in my Jade Sun progeny and other progenies will have to address you as junior uncle. In the Pure Sun sect, the division of seniority was very clear. This had nothing to do with age. Duan Lingtian was young, but if he was accepted as a disciple by a god emperor of the Chunyang school, he would gain a bunch of disciples and grand disciples. Take the god emperor of the Jade Sun branch for example. If Duan Lingtian really became his disciple, not just Huang Feng but even Zhao Lu and Qin Wuyang would have to address Duan Lingtian as junior uncle. As soon as Huang Feng finished speaking, Zhao Lu smiled faintly before Duan Lingtian could reply. Huang Feng, is your Jade Sun progeny really going to take advantage of this situation? It was a good thing to be accepted as a disciple by a god emperor. However, in Zhao Lu's opinion, most of the god emperors in the Chunyang school would be happy to accept a genius like Duan Lingtian as their disciple. That would be good for them as well. The good thing was that once Duan Lingtian grew and surpassed them, they could proudly say that they had a disciple who had surpassed them. And once that disciple led the Pure Sun sect to the next level, while that disciple's name would go down in history, they would also go down in history. Duan Lingtian. This time Huang Feng ignored Zhao Lu. He looked at Duan Lingtian and continued, in addition, as long as Duan Lingtian joins the Jade Sun branch, we will give you another 2 million divine crystals. And Huang Feng didn't just promise divine crystals, he also promised a lot of good things such as emperor-level divine pellets and all kinds of treasures. Many of the onlookers couldn't help but click their tongues when they heard Huang Feng's words. The Jade Sun branch is really generous. Is it worth it to pay such a big price for a Duan Lingtian? Although Duan Lingtian killed 2 mid-level god emperors as a low-level god emperor with the help of the floating image pearl, who knows if those 2 mid-level god emperors had internal injuries or hidden injuries? Even if the Tianlong clan says no, we can still assume that the Tianlong clan is bragging about Duan Lingtian. They won't say anything negative about Duan Lingtian. I think so too. There's no need to rope in a low-level god emperor who hasn't grown up yet, right? Many people shook their heads in disgust. Be that as it may. However, I'm afraid you don't know the situation of the Jade Sun branch. It said that Elder Jing Su, the only god emperor in the Jade Sun branch, was injured in the last heavenly tribulation. I'm afraid she won't last more than 8,000 years. Suddenly, someone whispered to the person next to him. Immediately, the people around him were in an uproar. At the same time, they also lowered their voices. Is this true? Really? If that's the case, then it's understandable. Although the group of people were whispering in low voices with Huang Feng's cultivation, how could he not hear them? His face immediately darkened, and he glanced at the source of the voice. The group of people immediately shut their mouths, not daring to say anything else. However, they could not hold it in any longer and began to communicate through voice transmissions. Look at Elder Huang Feng's expression. It seems like this matter is most likely true. Is the Jade Sun branch planning to recruit Duan Lingtian and cultivate him into the next god emperor? It should be. After all, Duan Lingtian isn't even 3,000 years old, but he's already a low-level god emperor. In the past, he didn't have much of a background. Now that he's in the Chunyang school, if the Jade Sun branch spends a lot of effort to cultivate him, it won't be difficult for them to produce another god emperor within 10,000 years. At that time, even if the current god emperor of the Jade Sun branch falls under the heavenly tribulation, his branch will have another backer to rely on. They won't have to disband. In fact, Duan Lingtian was shocked when Huang Feng from the Jade Sun progeny offered 2 million divine crystals. Were all the god emperors of the Chunyang school that rich? Previously, Zhen Pingfan had casually given him 10 million divine crystals. Now the Jade Sun branch wanted to give him 2 million divine crystals. However, based on Huang Feng's words, it was obvious that his Grandmaster, the only God Emperor of the Jade Sun branch, was behind this. At this time, even Zhao Lu couldn't help but frown when he heard Huang Feng's words. He never expected the Jade Sun branch to be so determined. Chapter 3948. The Jade Sun progeny was treating Duanling Tian as their last straw of hope. For a moment, when Zhao Lu looked at Huang Feng again, the look in his eyes became complicated. In the history of Chunyang School, there were many branches that could only disband due to the lack of successors. The people in the branches all left the floating islands that they regarded as their home. Some stayed together and worked hard. Some of them turned to other branches. Some could not recover from the setback. The branches that were doing well were completely shattered. All because of the loss of their only God Emperor. Of course, Zhao Lu did not feel much pity for them. This was the cruelty of the world. Only the strong could enjoy special treatment and set the rules. In Chunyang School, no branch was an exception. Duanling Tian, I hope you can consider it. This is my soul orb. Once you've made up your mind and have an answer in mind, contact me at any time. After Huang Feng finished explaining the conditions of the Jade Sun progeny, he gave his soul pearl to Duanling Tian. Before he left, he paused and sent a voice transmission to Duanling Tian. Duanling Tian, if you join the Jade Sun progeny, apart from the things Grand Ancestor promised, I, Huang Feng, am also willing to give you half of my fortune. After saying this, Huang Feng left with the young man behind him. Before the young man left, he transmitted his voice to Duanling Tian. Senior brother Duan, if you join the Jade Sun branch, will help you become a God Emperor. It's the best choice for you to join the Chunyang School. In the end, the young man introduced himself. He was Huang Feng's disciple. After Huang Feng left, Zhao Lu and Duanling Tian, who were about to leave, were stopped again. This time the person who stopped them was an old man. The old man had white hair and a ruddy complexion. He wore a blue robe and had an amiable expression. As soon as he entered, he looked at Zhao Lu and said, Zhao Lu, I'd like to have a word with Duanling Tian. Senior Marshal Brother Lu, please. In front of this old man, Zhao Lu's attitude was clearly different. Puzzled, Duanling Tian glanced at the old man's waist and found the answer from his identity token. He's Elder Yushu from Chunyang School. Chunyang School's Elder Jade Void was one of the strongest existences in Chunyang School below the God Emperor level. None of them were weaker than the Golden Dragon Elder of the Tianlong clan. They were definitely the best of the best among the high-level divine emperors. Duanling Tian, my name is Lu Yuan. I'm from the tyrannical saber lineage. The old man looked at Duanling Tian and introduced himself with a smile. My grandfather, the Void Pure Stage Elder Lu Jingtao, is the head of the tyrannical saber lineage. As soon as Lu Yuan spoke, Zhao Lu's solemn voice rang in Duanling Tian's ears. Duanling Tian, this is Lu Yuan, a Jade Void Elder from the tyrannical saber progeny. He's also the grandson of old ancestor Lu Jingtao, a Void Pure Stage Elder and the strongest person in the tyrannical saber progeny. Zhao Lu's voice transmission and Lu Yuan's words resounded in Duanling Tian's ears almost at the same time. Before Duanling Tian could recover from his shock, the onlookers in the surroundings had just recovered from the shock of seeing Lu Yuan. It's Elder Lu Yuan. Oh my god. Even Elder Yushu came personally. Duanling Tian. What a great honor. The tyrannical saber lineage is actually tempted by Duanling Tian. Is Duanling Tian's temptation that great? Lu Yuan's appearance shocked everyone. In fact, there were also people from other lineages nearby. However, after the leader of the Jade Sun lineage, Elder Su Huang Feng, spoke up, they thought of the conditions that their lineage could offer and asked for the opinions of the higher-ups. However, none of them showed up. It was because the things that they could offer were inferior to the Jade Sun lineage. Instead of showing up and being rejected, it was better not to show up. This way they could still save some face. However, when they saw that the tyrannical saber lineage had come, and it was even Elder Yushu Lu Yuan, they were all shocked. The tyrannical saber lineage values Duanling Tian so much? In Chunyang School there were a total of 19 lineages. Among them, 7 of the great lineages were overseen by Void Pure Stage Elders, while the other 12 lineages were overseen by Quiet Void Stage Elders. The tyrannical saber lineage was considered relatively strong among the 7 great lineages because it had 3 God Emperor experts. It was also one of the only 2 lineages that had 3 God Emperor experts among the 7 great lineages. Elder Lu Yuan. Now, while Duanling Tian greeted Lu Yuan with a smile, he heard the discussions and whispers of the people around him. He had a basic understanding of the tyrannical saber lineage. The tyrannical saber lineage was one of the stronger lineages in Chunyang school. It was also one of the only 2 lineages that had 3 God Emperor experts among the 19 lineages in Chunyang school. As for the other lineage that had 3 God Emperor experts, Duan Lingtian guessed that Jinping Fan, Qin Weiyang Zhao Lu, and the Yun Peak lineage that he was in might be one of them. In the Yun Peak lineage, the God Emperor experts that he knew were Quiet Void Stage Elder Jinping Fan, Void Pierce Stage Elder Jin Yunfeng, and Chunyang School's Sect Master. However, although the Chunyang School's Sect Master is from the Yun Peak lineage, can he still be considered a God Emperor expert of the Yun Peak lineage? Thinking of this, Duan Lingtian felt that he should not count the Chunyang School's Sect Master as one of them. After all, he was the Sect Master of a sect. He controlled all the major lineages and could no longer be considered a member of any lineage. Duan Lingtian. Lu Yuan looked at Duan Lingtian and said with a smile, "It's not that our tyrannical saber lineage can't provide the conditions that the Jade Sun lineage mentioned, but it's very difficult for us to give it to you alone. However, although the material conditions that we can give are inferior to the Jade Sun lineage, our tyrannical saber lineage can promise to let you become a disciple of one of the 2 Quiet Void Stage Elders. In addition, when the Void Pierce Stage Elders are free, they can also guide you." As soon as Lu Yuan said this, the scene immediately went into an uproar. A Void Pierce Stage Elder will personally guide him? At this moment, some of the people who were originally calm had their eyes bloodshot when they looked at Duan Lingtian. Void Pierce Stage Elders were the most powerful existences in the Chunyang school. They symbolized the supreme powerlessness of the Chunyang school. Usually they were elusive. It was difficult to even meet them, let alone get them to guide him. However, what made these people even angrier was, Duan Lingtian in front of them still had a calm expression after hearing Elder Lu Yuan's promise from the tyrannical saber lineage. It was as if he was not surprised at all. Wasn't this a surprise? This Duan Lingtian is doing this on purpose, right? He's pretending to be calm to seek better conditions, right? Isn't this guy too greedy? Duan Lingtian, consider it. This is. Elder Lu Yuan said with a smile as he took out a lineage's soul orb from his storage ring. It was obviously his own soul orb. However, before he could pass the soul orb to Duan Lingtian, before he could finish speaking, he was interrupted by Duan Lingtian. "Elder Lu Yuan, there's no need to give me the soul orb. Today here in front of you, I'll make a statement. I, Duan Lingtian, have already decided which lineage I will join just now. So, I'm sorry." As Duan Lingtian spoke, he smiled apologetically. Although Lu Yuan was a little surprised when he heard this, he still took a deep look at Duan Lingtian. Everyone has their own aspirations. Our tyrannical saber lineage won't force you. As soon as he finished speaking, Lu Yuan looked at Zhao Lu. After greeting him, he floated away. In the blink of an eye, his elegant back disappeared before everyone's eyes. As soon as Lu Yuan left, many gazes immediately landed on Duan Lingtian. Duan Lingtian has decided again? Now he rejected Elder Lu Yuan's soul orb. However, he accepted Elder Huang Feng's soul orb just now. Could it be that he's planning to join the Righteous Yang lineage? The Righteous Yang lineage doesn't have a Void Pierce Stage Elder. So what if there's no Void Pierce Stage Elder? The Righteous Yang lineage is in urgent need of nurturing another God Emperor expert. The others in the Righteous Yang lineage obviously don't have a chance. If Duan Lingtian goes to the Righteous Yang lineage, he will definitely be heavily nurtured. If I were Duan Lingtian, I would also choose the Righteous Yang lineage. Wouldn't it be better to become the leader of the Righteous Yang lineage in the future? Hearing the discussions around him, even though Zhao Lu already had an idea, he still couldn't help but waver. Duan Lingtian? Zhao Lu looked at Duan Lingtian with a puzzled expression. Duan Lingtian smiled and said, "Elder Zhao Lu, you and I will be members of the same lineage in the future. Let's take care of each other in the future." Of course, Duan Lingtian said these words on purpose. It was because he didn't want everyone, including the members of the Righteous Yang lineage, to misunderstand him. Zhao Lu was stunned for a moment after hearing his words. Then he smiled and said, "The Cloud Peak welcomes you to join us." The Cloud Peak lineage. Duan Lingtian actually decided to join the Cloud Peak lineage? For a moment, everyone who originally thought that Duan Lingtian wanted to join the Righteous Yang lineage was dumbfounded. What benefits did the Cloud Peak lineage give him? They actually made him give up on the Righteous Yang lineage. The Righteous Yang lineage is prepared to spend all their resources to nurture him. However, he didn't choose the Righteous Yang lineage? I'm very curious. What benefits did the Cloud Peak lineage give him? It can't be that he directly chose the Cloud Peak lineage because the elders of the Cloud Peak lineage brought him back, right? I don't think that's the only reason. In this world, the strong are revered and profit is the most important thing. A single misstep can cause one's strength to not be able to keep up and die under the Millennium Tribulation. Hearing the discussions around him, Duan Tian looked at them and smiled faintly. If any of you know the righteous Yang lineage, please pass on my message. I, Duan Tian, do not aspire to control any lineage in Chunyang School. I have confidence in becoming a great god. However, when that time comes, I won't be in Chunyang School anymore. At this moment, Duan Tian seemed to have become much taller in the eyes of the Chunyang School students. At the same time, they deeply felt Duan Tian's ambition. Duan Tian's ambition was not limited to Chunyang School. He wanted to go even higher, even further. My apologies, Elder Huang Feng. At the same time, Duan Tian sent a message to Huang Feng through the soul orb he'd left behind. He hadn't actually planned to accept Huang Feng's soul orb earlier. He'd only taken it because he'd been shocked by the righteous Yang lineage's generosity. Chapter 39-49. Duan Tian knew very well. The reason why the Jade Sun faction had paid such a high price to recruit him was because the leader of the Jade Sun faction, Elder Jingshu Qiyuyang, wanted to nurture him into a successor and protect the Jade Sun faction. And this was something that he could never do. If not for this, the Jade Sun branch's offer might have tempted him. However, he had already decided to join the Yun Peak branch. However, because of the Jade Sun branch's goal, even if he did not plan to join the Yun Peak branch, he would not join the Jade Sun branch. If he expressed that he would not stay in the Jade Sun branch in the future, the Jade Sun branch would not have paid such a high price to recruit him. His ambition was not in the Chunyang School. This was the reason why Duan Tian had rejected the Jade Sun branch. It was a reason that no one could refute. Elder Zhao Lu, let's go. Duan Tian called out to Zhao Lu and took the lead to walk out of the door. When Zhao Lu caught up to Duan Tian, the others finally regained their senses. Their eyes were filled with complicated emotions as they looked at Duan Tian. A young man who's not even 3,000 years old actually has such great ambition. Is this arrogance or confidence? Based on his current achievements, it's more likely that he's confident. If I were him and became a lower divine emperor at this age, I might think the same way. Having a high cultivation base doesn't mean he's strong. Didn't you see the floating image pearl recording of him killing the 2 middle-level divine emperor men of sacrifice? So what if I saw it? Who knows if the 2 middle-level divine emperor men of sacrifice were already injured and he took advantage of them? In the sect affairs hall, some of the Chunyang School disciples thought Duan Tian was confident, while others thought Duan Tian was arrogant. In any case, the people from the other branches did not show up. After the Jade Sun branch and the Tyrannical Saber branch had shown up to invite Duan Tian to join the Jade Sun branch and the Tyrannical Saber branch. First of all, they knew they were not as good as the Tyrannical Saber branch. Secondly, they didn't have the same conditions as the Jade Sun lineage. Furthermore, there were a few branches that had similar thoughts as the Jade Sun branch. They wanted Duan Tian to join their branch and nurture him to become a God Emperor so that he could take over their branch's only God Emperor position in the future and continue to protect their branch. After leaving the sect affair hall, Zhao Lu glanced at Duan Tian and smilingly said, Duan and shall I show you around the Island of Versatility? The Island of Versatility is very big. Duan Tian gently shook his head. Elder Zhao Lu, there's no need to rush. Bring me to the examination hall first. In less than an hour, Duan Tian and Zhao Lu entered the sect hall again. At this moment, the group of people in the sect affairs hall were still talking about what had just happened. They kept talking about Duan Tian. Duan Tian? Why is he here again? Didn't he just leave? The Pure Yang sect's disciples who were still in a daze finally had an answer when they saw Zhao Lu bringing Duan Tian to the registration counter and taking out a piece of paper. Duan Tian became a true martial disciple? Oh my god. It's only been less than an hour and Duan Tian has already become a true martial disciple? Since when did the true martial disciple test become so simple? In the history of our Pure Sun sect, the record of a lower godly emperor becoming a true martial disciple has always been. I think it took him 4 hours and a quarter of an hour to pass the true martial disciple exam, right? That means, Duan Tian broke the record for a lower god emperor true martial disciple in Chunyang School? It's obvious. Duan Tian is too strong, isn't he? Could it be that the two middle-level god emperors he killed in the Tianlong clan were not injured middle-level god emperors? Could he really kill a middle-level god emperor? Don't forget, the old ancestor who set the record for the low godly emperor true martial disciple exam was over 8,000 years old. Not only was he a low godly emperor, but he was also over 8,000 years old. As far as I know, the examination of a true martial disciple is not only based on cultivation but also age. The younger the age, the easier the examination. So, Duan Lingtian passed the examination so quickly because the examination was easy? That should be the case. Otherwise, how could it be so exaggerated? He's not even 3,000 years old, but the difficulty of the examination is not even half of that of the ancestor who set the record. In the beginning, when Duan Lingtian was going through the formalities to become a true disciple, many people were shocked by the speed at which he passed the examination. After some people reminded them of Duan Lingtian's age and the rules of the true martial disciple's assessment, they finally understood that Duan Lingtian must have passed the true martial disciple's assessment so easily that any primitive divine emperor would be able to pass it. Hearing these people's words, Duan Lingtian was calm. He ignored them and went through the formalities to become a true disciple. However, Zhao Lu, who was next to Duan Lingtian, heard these people's words and couldn't help but twitch the corners of his mouth. Simple? These guys. I'm afraid they don't know that those guys in the examination hall gave Duan Lingtian the most difficult examination of a lower god emperor true martial disciple. Although Duan Lingtian is only a lower god emperor with his strength, except for a few true martial disciples under 10,000 years old in Chunyang school, I'm afraid no one can defeat him. These were the thoughts that appeared in Zhao Lu's mind at this moment. He felt as though he was listening to a group of idiots when he heard the whispers behind him. However, Duan Lingtian's temperament is really amazing. So many people look down on him, but he's still so calm. Zhao Lu could not help but sigh inwardly. If he were in Duan Lingtian's shoes, he would have been arrogant and would not allow others to misunderstand him. If he were in Duan Lingtian's shoes, he would have stepped forward and sneered at these people. Moreover, he would have told them the difficulty of the examination he had passed and asked them to go to the examination hall if they did not believe him. Are all people from the Devata realms so calm? That's not right. I also have some people from the Devata realms around me, but they shouldn't be so calm when they were at Duan Lingtian's age. Zhao Lu was unaware that the people from the Devata realms were all from the Devata realms. Most of the people around him who came from the Devata realms had grown up with silver spoons in their mouths. They had powerful backgrounds in the Devata realms. Naturally, their temperament could not be compared to Duan Lingtian who came from the mundane realm. Moreover, Duan Lingtian was reincarnated. Although he had only lived for about 20 years in his past life, he had traveled to the ends of the earth and seen all kinds of people in the world. While Duan Lingtian was going through the procedures to become a true martial disciple, a series of messages came from the examination hall on the island of all manifestations. Duan Lingtian who came from the Tianlong clan is as strong as an ordinary elder Qing Su. Among the prodigies under 10,000 years old in Chunyang school, I'm afraid no one under 8,000 years old is a match for him. There are still 50 years before the Seven Mansions banquet that is held once every 10,000 years. If he can break through and become a medium divine lord in these 50 years, he'll definitely be ranked in the top 10 in the Seven Mansions banquet. Not only did these messages reach the people from the major branches of Chunyang school, but they also reached the ears of the decision-makers in Chunyang school. In Chunyang school, apart from the major branches, there was an independent group of people who were the decision-makers in Chunyang school. These decision-makers were mainly responsible for the management of Chunyang school. The decision-makers were led by the sect leader of Chunyang school. Below him were the vice sect leaders and the other decision-makers. These people were from the major branches of Chunyang school. Almost every branch had someone in the decision-makers in Chunyang school. Decision-makers who are in Chunyang school, please come to the conference hall on the island of all manifestations. The sect master of the Pure Sun sect was a middle-aged man with a stalwart figure, handsome face and indifferent eyes. After he sent out a message, the people who received his message immediately began to inform the other members of the decision-making team. When Duan Lingtian and Zhao Lu left under the watchful eyes of the people in the sect affairs pavilion, all the decision-makers in the Pure Sun sect gathered together and began a solemn meeting. The meeting centered around Duan Lingtian. Everyone, you should know the significance of the Seven Mansions banquet to Chunyang school. In the conference hall, the Chunyang school sect leader stood at the head of the table with his hands clasped behind his back. He glanced at the people below him and spoke in a low voice. Sect leader, if you have something to say, please say it directly. Below him, an old man said with a smile. At this moment, the Chunyang School sect leader continued, the Seven Mansions banquet will determine whether Chunyang School will have a chance to produce an upper great god emperor. The current upper great god emperor of the Heaven's Roar sect of the state capital of Qing was born after the Seven Mansions banquet. At that time, an outstanding prodigy from the state capital of Qing made it to the top 10 of the Seven Mansions banquet. The Chunyang School sect leader said in a low voice, at first I did not have high hopes for this Seven Mansions banquet. However, there is now a single person who has brought hope to the Pure Sun sect. The Chunyang School sect leader said. Sect leader. At this moment, another old man below him spoke up. I know this person you're talking about. He's from the Tianlong clan. Yun Feng brought him back to the sect and has already expressed his willingness to join Yun Feng. If that's the case, allocate more resources to Yun Feng to cultivate him. As long as he can become a middle-level great god emperor within 50 years, based on the strength he's shown so far, he'll definitely make it to the top 10 of the Seven Mansions banquet. As the old man finished speaking, he looked at the people present with a smile. Everyone, what do you think of my suggestion? When the others heard the old man's words, they all smiled bitterly. Who didn't know that this old man was from Yun Feng, just like the sect leader? If it were any other time, they would naturally object to the idea of allocating more resources to Yun Feng since they were from other branches. But now how could they object? Chapter 3950. Duan Lingtian followed Zhao Lu around the island of versatility after completing the procedures for becoming a true martial disciple in the sect hall. Zhao Lu also introduced him to everything on the island of versatility. For example, where was the Law Enforcement Hall, the Artifact Hall, the Divine Pill Hall, the Free Trade Square, and the cultivation grounds of the non-branch disciples of the Chunyang School. Along the way, Duan Lingtian also saw the vastness of the island of versatility. It was like a large city with mountains and rivers mixed in it. In addition, some places on the island of versatility were heavily guarded. Duan Lingtian could not help but click his tongue. Some elders of the Spirit Void Realm were even dispatched. Duan Lingtian even saw a Jade Void Realm elder, who was known as the strongest person below the Emperor Immortal in the Chunyang School. Even Zhao Lu had to respectfully address him as Martial Uncle. However, he was not from the branch of Yun Peak. Duan Lingtian. Just as Duan Lingtian and Zhao Lu were about to leave the island of versatility and return to Yun Peak Island, Zhao Lu suddenly stopped and smiled at Duan Lingtian, who also stopped with a puzzled look on his face. I have good news. Zhao Lu smiled brightly. I just received a message. After you passed the most difficult Lower Divine Emperor True Martial Disciple assessment, the sect master led the decision-makers of the sect to gather for a meeting. This meeting mainly revolves around you. Duan Lingtian was stunned by Zhao Lu's words. Meh. Even if he had passed the most difficult Lower Divine Emperor True Disciple assessment set by the examination hall, it should not have caused such a big commotion. Even the sect master of the Chunyang School held a meeting for him? As for who the decision-makers of the Chunyang School were, Zhao Lu had mentioned it to him before, so he knew that it was an independent group that did not belong to the major branches. It was mainly responsible for managing the sect and managing the affairs of the sect. In the decision-makers group, there were people from all the major branches. There were also many people from the Chunyang School who did not have any branches to rely on. In the Chunyang School, those who did not have any branches to rely on were also known as the Chunyang School's disciples. The meeting ended not long ago. Seeing Duan Lingtian's shock, Zhao Lu's smile remained. During the meeting, the sect master mentioned something. The elders of Yun Peak were the first to agree, and then the rest of the higher-ups unanimously agreed on something. Do you know what it is? asked Zhao Lu smiled. Duan Lingtian shook his head. How could he possibly know? He didn't participate in that meeting. The meeting has decided that the sect will hand over a batch of resources to the Yun Peak lineage and use them on you. Zhao Lu grinned. I'm afraid you'll be able to get the resources in a few days at most. Zhao was sect's disciple. The sect master of Chunyang School had called a meeting of the decision-makers just to give him benefits? Although his performance in the examination hall was not bad, and he had even broken the Chunyang School's record for passing the True Disciple assessment. Even so, it was not that bad, right? The Chunyang School's sect master was an emperor god, and there should also be emperor gods in the decision-makers group. Even if they were not emperor gods, they must be the best among the god emperors. Did this group of people gather for a meeting just to discuss benefits for him, a low-level god emperor? At this moment even Duan Lingtian subconsciously had a thought. Could it be that this was also the work of that elder Zhenping fan of the Jingshu sect? Thinking of this, Duan Lingtian looked at Zhao Lu and said with a wry smile, "Elder Zhao Lu, did Elder Zhen ask the sect master to do this? That's not very good, is it?" Duan Lingtian was really flattered to receive such treatment when he had just arrived. He could imagine that once this news spread, the eyes of all the true martial disciples in the Pure Yang sect would turn red with jealousy. Martial granduncle? After hearing Duan Lingtian's words, Zhao Lu was stunned at first. After a while he regained his senses and realized what Duan Lingtian meant. For a moment, Zhao Lu could not help but shake his head and say, "Duan Lingtian, you think too highly of Martial Granduncle." Martial Granduncle's status in the sect is needless to say. However, let alone him, even if he and the sect master's teacher, the leader of our Cloud Peak, could make the sect master make such a suggestion, the other members of the decision-makers would definitely reject it. Don't forget. In the sect, other than our Cloud Peak, there are many other branches. Excluding our Cloud Peak, there are still 6 other branches that have Void Peer stage elders overseeing them. In terms of strength, if the sect master is not included, our Cloud Peak won't be ranked in the top 2 among all the branches. If the sect master is included, we can be compared with the other 2 branches. When Zhao Lu said this, the confusion that had arisen in Duan Lingtian's heart was resolved. From the looks of it, apart from the Ba Dao lineage, the other lineage that had 3 emperor gods wasn't from the Yun Peak lineage. Instead, there were other branches. Under such circumstances, if Old Ancestor dares to make the sect master make such a request, the decision-makers of the Tyrant Saber clan and the Hidden Sword clan will definitely not agree. If the sect master insists on doing it, the Old Ancestors of the Tyrant Saber clan and the Hidden Sword clan might stand out and stop him. By then, it would be useless even if the Old Ancestors come out because the other party has 2 Old Ancestors. Moreover, not only the Old Ancestors of the Tyrant Saber clan and the Hidden Sword clan, but also the Old Ancestors of the other 4 branches that have Void Peer stage elders. If the 6 Old Ancestors don't agree, do you think the Old Ancestors of our Cloud Peak can make the decision? In the end, Zhao Lu asked rhetorically. Duan Lingtian was speechless when he heard this. So, it wasn't Elder Zhen who asked the sect master to do that? Moreover, even the sect master himself could not make the group of decision-makers agree to give such high treatment to a disciple who had just entered the sect and had even entered the Yun Peak lineage. Elder Zhao Lu, you mean? I, Duan Lingtian, am the one who asked them to unanimously make this decision? Duan Lingtian suddenly felt a chill down his spine. As the saying goes, one would not wake up early if there was no benefit. The higher-ups of Chunyang School were actually willing to spend so many resources on him. You would not believe that they did not want anything from him. Are these people trying to dig a hole for me? Duan Lingtian's heart throbbed. In the end, he could not help but look around vigilantly and ask Zhao Lu. Elder Zhao Lu, do you know why they are willing to spend so many resources on me? I don't believe that they are doing this because they think I'm a genius. Upon hearing Duan Lingtian's words, Zhao Lu shook his head and said with a smile, "Naturally, it's impossible that they're doing this because you're a genius. I'm afraid only the people from our Cloud Peak would agree to this. The people from the other progenies would never agree to this. They are doing this because you can affect the future of the Cloud Peak," Zhao Lu said. Duan Lingtian nodded. "Me? Affect the future of the Cloud Peak?" Duan Lingtian was stunned when he heard this. Then he smiled bitterly and said, "Elder Zhao Lu, is the Cloud Peak so optimistic that I can break through and become an Upper Divine Emperor?" In Duan Lingtian's opinion, the Chunyang School did not lack intermediate Divine Emperors now. Perhaps only an Upper Divine Emperor could make the Chunyang School treat him so politely when he had just joined the Cloud Peak. "Elder Zhao Lu, although I know that I will be able to step into the Upper Divine Emperor realm sooner or later, when that time comes, I will definitely not stay in the Pure Sun sect because I have my own matters to attend to." Duan Lingtian's tone was filled with helplessness. "Elder Zhao Lu, why don't you talk to the Cloud Peak and ask him to withdraw these resources? I really don't plan to stay in the Chunyang School for long." However, after hearing Duan Lingtian's words, Zhao Lu could not help but laugh. "Duan Lingtian, aren't you overestimating yourself? I also admit that you might be able to break through and become an Upper Divine Emperor in the future. But the problem is, you are only a Lower Divine Emperor now. Even for you, a Lower Divine Emperor, to break through and become an Upper Divine Emperor, I'm afraid you will need a long time to accumulate. Moreover, you can't let anything happen to you halfway through. In the Chunyang School, It's not that there are no geniuses who have the potential to become upper divine emperors, but most of them died halfway and failed to become upper divine emperors. Do you think the Cloud Peak would give you so many resources when you are only a lower divine emperor just because they think that you will become an upper divine emperor? After saying this, Zhao Lu could not help but laugh. Then why? Duan Lingtian felt that Zhao Lu's words made sense, but he was even more confused now. Because of the 7 prefectures banquet. Zhao Lu's smile suddenly disappeared and he said solemnly, "The 7 prefectures banquet?" Duan Lingtian's eyes narrowed when he heard these words. This was not the first time he had heard these words. Long Qingchong, the clan leader of the Tianlong clan, had mentioned these words before. At the same time, Long Qingchong had told him that the 7 prefectures feast was only open to young prodigies under the age of 10,000. It was a feast that was held every 10,000 years by the 7 prefectures around Tunglung province. Because of this, Long Qingchong felt that the 5 top god emperor forces in Tunglung province would definitely extend an olive branch to him after he killed the 2 medium divine emperors. They might even try to snatch him away. Later on, Long Qingchong also told him that the other 4 god emperor forces in Tunglung province had sent people who were as strong as the Tianlong clan's golden dragon elder to the Tianlong clan to look for him. However, while these people were waiting for him to come out of the emperor battle realm at the Tianlong clan, Elder Jing Su of the Chunyang school, a god emperor expert, Zhen Pingfan, had arrived and forcefully persuaded them to leave. It was Long Qingchong who had persuaded them to leave. However, Duan Lingtian felt that it was not as simple as persuasion. There had to be some coercion involved. What is the 7 prefectures feast? Duan Lingtian asked again. Although I heard the clan leader of the Tianlong clan mention it, he doesn't seem to know much about it. He only knows that it is a feast of great significance to the 5 top forces in Tunglung province, including the Chunyang school. Chapter 3951. The 7 Prefectures Grand Banquet. Zhao Lu took a deep breath when he heard Duan Lingtian's question. His eyes lit up instantly. On the surface, it's a stage for the most outstanding young prodigies of the 7 prefectures to show off their strength. However, there's an opportunity behind the scenes. An opportunity for the forces behind the top 10 in the 7 prefectures grand banquet. In that opportunity, one of the intermediate god emperors from those forces has a chance to advance to the next level and become an upper god emperor in a short period of time. Of course, it's not 100%, but it's very likely. Throughout history, at least 2 intermediate god emperors have been promoted to upper god emperors in every 7 prefectures grand banquet. In the last 7 prefectures grand banquet, the prodigy from the Heaven's Roar sect of the state of Qing made it to the top 10. Not long after, an intermediate god emperor from the Heaven's Roar sect successfully advanced to upper god emperor. Since then, the Heaven's Roar sect has been recognized as the strongest force in the state of Qing. This was not the first time Duan Lingtian had heard of it. It was not the first time he had heard of the Heaven's Roar sect either. Previously, when he was still in the Heavenly Dragon sect in the Peace City of the Sovereign Battle Realm, a Celestial Emperor-level force of the Qing State Prefecture had sent a Celestial Emperor expert, Elder Silver Puppet, to recruit him. At that time, Elder Silver Puppet had quarreled with an Emperor God expert from the 7 Kills Valley in Tunglung Province. The 7 Kills Valley expert had also mentioned that Puppet Villa was inferior to the Heaven's Roar sect. What kind of opportunity can allow an intermediate God Emperor to advance to upper God Emperor? Duan Lingtian asked curiously as he looked at Zhao Lu. Zhao Lu smiled bitterly and shook his head. I'm not too sure about the specifics. I'm afraid only the Emperor God experts in the sects know about this. I don't have access to that level of knowledge yet, Zhao Lu said. Duan Lingtian nodded in understanding when he heard this. If you really want to know, you can ask Senior Granduncle, Zhao Lu said. The Senior Granduncle he was referring to was Zhen Pingfan. It doesn't seem to be too long until the next 7 prefectures feast? Duan Lingtian asked Zhao Lu. Previously, he had heard the clan master of the Tianlong clan, Long Qingchong, mention that the next 7 Manners feast wouldn't be too far away. Yes. Zhao Lu nodded. About 50 years. As for the reason why the sect is pouring resources into you now, it's because we hope that you can break through to the mid-level divine sovereign realm in these 50 years. That way you will be able to obtain one of the top 10 rankings in the 7 prefectures grand banquet and fight for a chance to become a void peer stage elder of the sect. Zhao Lu said. 50 years. Duan Lingtian's eyes glinted when he heard the Pure Sun sect wanted him to become an intermediate divine emperor within 50 years. A faint smile appeared on his face. Without the help of the Chunyang school, he was not very confident that he could break through to the mid-level Divine Emperor realm in 50 years. Now that the Chunyang school was preparing to pour a large amount of resources into him, he couldn't help but look forward to it. With the foundation of the Chunyang school, it shouldn't be too much of a problem for him to become a medium Divine Emperor in 50 years, right? Elder Zhao Lu, do you know what kind of resources the sect has given me? Duan Lingtian asked curiously. Although he was confident in the Chunyang school, he didn't know what kind of resources the Chunyang school was going to give him. Therefore he was a little uncertain. Based on what I know, as Zhao Lu mentioned the resources the Chunyang school was going to give to Duan Lingtian's eyes immediately lit up. Among the resources, there were some rare divine fruits that were priceless. There were also other treasures that could be consumed directly or refined into divine pills. Duan Lingtian was confident that he could refine some of the treasures into supreme divine pills with better effects. Apart from that, the Chunyang school had also given him some imperial-grade divine pills. These were the treasures that the Chunyang school had collected over the years. Normally, even true martial disciples wouldn't have the opportunity to obtain these treasures. Now, they were giving them to Duan Lingtian unconditionally. Duan Lingtian, it can be said that the sect is going all out to nurture you. If you don't break through to the intermediate Divine Emperor stage in 50 years, you must rank in the top 10 in the 7 Mansions banquet. Even if that's not very likely. Otherwise, if these resources go to waste, Yun Feng won't blame you, but the other branches will definitely have other ideas. At that time, it won't be easy for you to leave the Chunyang school. Zhao Lu paused for a moment before he continued. Of course, when I said it won't be easy for you to leave the Chunyang school, I didn't mean that the Chunyang school wants to imprison you. It's that the other branches want you to stay in the Chunyang school for a longer period of time and contribute to the Chunyang school. It's the same as asking you to repay your debt. Now that you're wasting resources on you, you're being forced to repay the debt. Zhao Lu said. At first, Duan Lingtian was slightly taken aback when he heard Zhao Lu's words. However, when he heard Zhao Lu's words, Duan Lingtian regained his senses and smiled faintly. What? Aren't you worried? Zhao Lu asked. It's not that I'm not worried. Duan Lingtian shook his head. I can only say that I can completely understand what they're doing. If he were in Duan Lingtian's shoes, if he were to waste his resources on a stranger and the stranger failed to live up to his expectations and did not accomplish what he wanted him to do. Under such circumstances, he would not be happy if the stranger simply patted his butt and left. Elder Zhao Lu, how much do you know about the 7 Prefectures feast? Before Zhao Lu left, Duan Lingtian asked him many questions about the 7 Mansion banquet. Soon after, Duan Lingtian managed to find out everything Zhao Lu knew. It was also at this time that Duan Lingtian had a more comprehensive understanding of the 7 Prefectures feast. The 7 Prefectures feast was jointly organized by the 7 prefectures. It was a feast for the most outstanding young prodigies in the 7 prefectures. However, only the top forces in the 7 prefectures feast would participate. For example, only the top 5 forces in Tunglung province were qualified to participate in the 7 prefectures feast. Forces like the Tianlong clan and the Heaven Illumination sect, even if they were Emperor God forces, were not qualified to participate. However, is the 7 prefectures feast really only organized by the top forces in the 7 prefectures? Then why do the young prodigies in the top 10 forces in the 7 prefectures feast have a middle Emperor God expert who has a chance of being promoted to an upper Emperor God? What's the secret behind this? Duan Lingtian was very curious about this and could not help but send a message to Zhen Pingfan. However, there was no response from Zhen Pingfan. His message was like a stone sinking into the sea. It seems like Elder Zhen is cultivating or is unable to receive a message. Usually this would mean that Zhen Pingfan had not received a message. After all, it would not take much time for him to reply to a message if he received one, unless he needed to plan the content of the message. If he did not receive a message, it must mean that Zhen Pingfan was in a state where he could not be disturbed and there was a disk array around him to block messages. Duan Lingtian was not in a hurry because he would have a chance to ask sooner or later. I'm really looking forward to the things that the Chunyang school gave me. Also, I can enter the Chunyang school's secret room freely? Does that mean that I can further comprehend the many laws I have mastered in there to a higher level? I'm not in a hurry. I'll wait until I break through to become a middle god emperor first. If I don't become a middle god emperor and stay in the secret room for so long, the decision makers in the Chunyang school might not be willing. If I become a middle god emperor and stay in there until the 7 prefectures feast begins, I don't think they will say anything. Duan Lingtian was relieved when he thought of this. Also, it's not convenient to refine Ultimate Emperor Divine pills in the Chunyang school, so I'll go out and do it. However, before that, I must guarantee that when I leave, my whereabouts will be absolutely secret. Originally, Duan Lingtian thought that since he hadn't offended anyone in the Tianlong clan, he wasn't worried about being ambushed when he went out. However, after chatting with Zhao Lu for a while, he learned that Zhao Lu didn't have much of a choice. Lan Shilin of the Righteous Faction, who was also the disciple of the Chunyang school who had captured the disciple of Senior Yi Beiyuan of the Heaven Illumination sect and brought him back to the Chunyang school, was a vengeful person. At first, Duan Lingtian was puzzled as to why Zhao Lu understood Lan Shilin so well. Later on, Zhao Lu told him that he had been in the Righteous Light faction before. It was only then that he came to a realization. At the same time, he became more wary of Lan Shilin. Thinking back to yesterday when he had faced Lan Shilin, although Lan Shilin had been smiling all the time, he still felt very uncomfortable. Duan Lingtian, don't underestimate Lan Shilin. Although Lan Shilin only became a middle-level god emperor 100 years ago, his strength is almost on par with the best middle-level god emperors in the Chunyang school. I'm afraid he might not be weaker than you. He's also one of the young prodigies from the Chunyang school who participated in the 7 Prefectures feast. Among the young prodigies under the age of 10,000 in the Chunyang school, the highest cultivation base is currently a middle-level god emperor. If we don't count you. Among the young prodigies under the age of 10,000 in the Chunyang school, Lan Shilin's strength can be ranked in the top 5. This was also Zhao Lu's warning to him. Moreover, if Lan Shilin wants to deal with you, he might not do it himself. He's the only direct descendant of the Righteous Light faction's patriarch, Lan Jingming. You can imagine how much his great-grandfather values him. Let's not talk about others, just Lu Hui by his side, the dignified elder Lingshu, is like his shadow, inseparable from him. The most important thing is, Lu Hui is different from ordinary elder Lingshu. In his eyes, the Righteous Light faction's patriarch is greater than the sky. If one day he has to choose between the Righteous Light faction's patriarch and the Chunyang school, he will choose the Righteous Light faction's patriarch without hesitation. If the Righteous Light faction's patriarch dies, he might not even frown. Even though Zhao Lu did not mention anything else, he only spoke up to this point. However, Duan Lingtian understood the meaning behind his words. If Lan Shilin really wanted to deal with him, he did not even need to find someone else. He only needed to send Elder Lingshu Lu Hui, who was by his side. Chapter 3952. Although he had not known Zhao Lu for long, Zhao Lu's character made him feel comfortable. In addition, Zhen Pingfan had asked Zhao Lu to take care of him when he first met him, which showed his trust in Zhao Lu. Therefore, Duan Lingtian approved of Zhao Lu from the bottom of his heart. Because of this, Zhao Lu's reminder and his own feelings made him believe that Lan Shilin was not a broad-minded person. Senior Yi. After taking a deep breath, Duan Lingtian thought of someone and immediately sent a message. Although he felt that it was unlikely that Lan Shilin would attack Yi Beiyuan and his disciple before dealing with him, he still decided to remind Yi Beiyuan. No matter what, Yi Beiyuan was his savior. He could not imagine what kind of danger he would have encountered if he had not met Yi Beiyuan when he first arrived at the plain battlefield where the mystic Handle land was adjacent to another plane of gods. Before he met Yi Beiyuan, he was fine. Although luck played a part, the more important reason was that he did not meet many people at that time. In the plain battlefield, the closer one was to the military camp, the more people there were. There was no telling when he would meet a bloodthirsty person who would kill him with a wave of his hand. At that time he had not even become a god. In the plain battlefield, no matter how weak they were basically existences at the godly king stage. One finger was enough to crush him to death. Little brother Duan? Yi Beiyuan quickly sent a message. Have you settled down in Chunyang school? Yi Beiyuan knew that Duan Lingtian had just arrived at Chunyang school, which was why he asked this. Yes. Duan Lingtian replied with a smile. Yes, I've settled down. You joined Yin Peak? After Yi Beiyuan asked with a smile, he added, I saw that you have a good relationship with Elder Zhen and Elder Qin. Elder Zhen even helped me because of you, so I thought it was impossible for you to join Yin Peak. In fact, Yi Beiyuan did not know much about the major branches in Chunyang school. Until this time, when his disciple was abducted by Lan Shilin, he asked many people and gained a certain understanding of the major branches of Chunyang school. At the same time, he also knew that Lan Shilin, who had kidnapped his disciple, Zhuozhongtong, was the crown prince of the righteous faction of Chunyang school. The only emperor god expert of the righteous light lineage, who was also the ancestor of the righteous light lineage, was his great-grandfather. At the same time, he was the only surviving descendant of the righteous light sect's grand ancestor. At that time, after finding out about Lan Xilin's background, Yi Beiyuan was almost in despair. However, for the sake of his disciples, he braced himself in the end and risked his life to go to Chunyang school. Then he was rejected and chased away by Lan Xilin. On the way out of Chunyang school he met Duan Lingtian. Never in his wildest dreams would he have imagined that the young man he had casually saved in the planar battlefield would actually be of such great help to him at such a time. He knew very well that if not for Duan Lingtian, his disciples Wu Zhongtong would have died without a doubt. That's right. Duan Lingtian smiled and said, "It seems like Senior Yi is quite familiar with Chunyang school. You even know about the Yun Peak faction." Previously, in order to save my disciple, I specifically asked around. Yi Beiyuan sighed. "Is he alright now?" Duan Lingtian asked. "He's alright," Yi Beiyuan replied. "Speaking of which, it's all thanks to you, little brother Duan. The two of us, master and disciple, are truly unable to repay this great kindness. Senior Yi, you're too kind. If not for you back then, I might not have been able to walk out of the planar battlefield," Duan Lingtian said repeatedly. At the same time, without waiting for Yi Beiyuan to speak, he went straight to the point. "Senior Yi, I've come to look for you this time mainly to remind you, if it's possible, it's best for you and your disciples to stay in the Heaven Illumination sect during this period of time. Don't go out easily." This time Yi Beiyuan was silent for a while before he spoke again. "Are you worried that Lan Xilin of the Righteous Light sect from Chunyang school will cause trouble for us?" "Yes," Duan Lingtian replied. "That Lan Xilin. I've only just heard that he's a vengeful person. I'm worried that if he lets you guys go in front of Elder Zhen, he'll feel indignant and cause trouble for you guys afterward." "Alright, I'll be careful." Hearing this, Yi Beiyuan's expression became slightly solemn. In fact, when his disciple was in trouble earlier, he had already heard that the crown prince of the Righteous Light sect, Lan Xilin, of the Chunyang school was a vengeful person. Originally, after Chunyang school's elder Jianghu stepped forward to help him, he felt that Lan Xilin would not dare to take the risk of offending elder Jianghu and make a move on him. However, now that Duan Lingtian had reminded him, he felt that if Lan Xilin really wanted to deal with him and his disciples, he could have done so without alerting elder Jianghu. "Little brother Duan, thank you for the reminder," Yi Beiyuan said solemnly. If it were not for Duan Lingtian's reminder, he would not have cared too much about this. "You're too kind, Senior Yi," Duan Lingtian said. "Little brother Duan." Just when Duan Lingtian thought that the communication between him and Yi Beiyuan was about to end, Yi Beiyuan suddenly called out to him. "After I returned to the Heaven Illumination sect, I heard that there's a genius divine emperor in the Tianlong clan. He's not even 3,000 years old, but he's already a lesser divine emperor. Moreover, he has the same name as you." In fact, Yi Beiyuan had just returned from the realm battlefield not long ago, so he was not very clear about what had happened recently. Moreover, as soon as he came out, he found out that his disciple had gotten into big trouble. Naturally, he was not in the mood to care about other things. Later on, when he heard from his disciple that the genius of the Tianlong clan was Duan Lingtian, he wondered if it was the same person. "It's me." Duan Lingtian heard Yi Beiyuan's question and answered directly. "It's really you?" Yi Beiyuan was shocked. Although he was mentally prepared, he was still shocked. The last time he met Duan Lingtian at the Chunyang school, he knew that Duan Lingtian was a divine emperor. At that time he was shocked for a long time. After all, when he met Duan Lingtian in the realm battlefield, Duan Lingtian was just a demigod. However, although he knew that Duan Lingtian was a lesser divine emperor, he did not expect him to be such a terrifying lesser divine emperor. He had killed 2 medium divine emperors in the Tianlong clan. Yi Beiyuan was stunned for a long time. He did not even remember how he ended the communication with Duan Lingtian. He was in a daze. From a demigod to a lesser divine emperor in less than 100 years? Has there ever been such a person in the history of the various realms of gods? Yi Beiyuan's heart trembled. He could not calm down for a long time. A lesser divine emperor less than 3,000 years old? Is he really 3,000 years old? Thinking of Duan Lingtian's cultivation progress in the past few decades, Yi Beiyuan could not help but suspect that Duan Lingtian's age might not be real. He might be even younger. After all, there is a divine pill that can hide one's bone age. Outside the Chunyang school's encampment. In a spacious area. In the void, 2 beautiful figures stood there, one in front and one behind. If one looked carefully, one would see that not far behind them in the sky, there was a tall and sturdy figure standing there, looking left and right from time to time. This was a middle-aged man with an ordinary appearance. He even looked a little honest. However, he gave off the feeling of an iron tower, as if he was unshakable. In front of him there were two beautiful figures, one in front and one behind. The person in front was a young girl. The person behind her was a beautiful woman. At this time, the young girl was looking in the direction of the Chunyang school reluctantly. "Young miss, we should go," the beautiful woman said softly to the young girl. "Aunt Xian, I want to see where my brother is now." As the young girl spoke, she approached the encampment of the Chunyang school. "Young miss, we can't go any further. The people of the Chunyang school will find out." Seeing this, the beautiful woman frowned slightly, but she still followed her. Almost as soon as the beautiful woman finished speaking, a powerful aura swept out from the encampment of the Chunyang school. A moment later, a figure seemed to appear from the void in the distance, and in the blink of an eye, he was in front of the young girl and the beautiful woman. "Who are you? Why are you spying on the Chunyang school?" The person who came was an old man with an identity token of Elder Lingshu hanging from his waist. He was frowning and staring at the two girls in front of him. At the same time, he extended his divine sense and directly scanned the two girls. However, just as his divine sense was about to touch the two girls, before it could touch them, it directly collapsed as if it was crushed by an invisible force. "How dare you!" A booming voice could be heard all of a sudden like a clap of thunder. The next moment, the burly middle-aged man standing in the void behind them flashed and appeared in front of the young girl like a ghost, protecting her behind him. An emperor god. The face of Elder Lingshu of the Chunyang school, whose divine sense had been shattered, instantly turned pale. When he looked at the middle-aged man again, his face was full of fear. There was a sincere fear in his eyes. He was just a high-level divine emperor. An emperor god could kill him like a dog. Without any hesitation, Elder Lingshu immediately sent a message back to the Chunyang school, directly to the person in charge of patrolling the sect among the decision-makers of the Chunyang school, an Elder Jingshu of the Chunyang school. An emperor god is spying on the Chunyang school outside? And this Elder Jingshu, after receiving the message, immediately flew out of the encampment of the Chunyang school. In just 2 breaths, he had already appeared outside the encampment of the Chunyang school. "Greetings, Uncle Master." As soon as this Elder Jingshu appeared, Elder Lingshu hurriedly bowed to salute. Elder Jingshu nodded slightly, then looked directly at the burly middle-aged man standing in the void not far away. He frowned slightly and said, "Your Excellency, what do you want to do by spying on the Chunyang school?" He also heard what had happened just now from Elder Lingshu. In general, Elder Lingshu's divine sense exploration was a little presumptuous. The other 3 people just appeared outside the encampment of the Chunyang school, looking in the direction of the encampment of the Chunyang school, and in fact they could not see anything, their divine senses did not extend over there. Because of this he was more polite now. "What? You Chunyang school people are so overbearing that you don't allow others to breathe here?" The beautiful woman stepped forward and said indifferently. Chapter 3953. Breathe. When Elder Jing Su heard the beautiful woman's words, he was stunned at first and then shook his head. "Miss, if you were me and stood in my position, would you believe what you said?" The beautiful woman heard this and said lightly, "In short, we don't intend to enter the Chunyang school's encampment area, nor do we intend to do anything to the Chunyang school. Moreover, is your Chunyang school afraid of us 3? As she spoke, there was a hint of sarcasm in the beautiful woman's tone. Elder Jing Su glanced deeply at the beautiful woman when he heard this, and then he glanced fearfully at the robust middle-aged man who was staring at him with an indifferent expression. He felt threatened by the robust middle-aged man. The other party stared at him, giving him a feeling of being stared at by a beast. It seemed that as long as he dared to make the first move, this beast would rush up and tear him apart without hesitation. "Elder." At this time, the girl who had been silent spoke. When she moved out, the burly middle-aged man also flashed behind her, guarding her like a guard. The beautiful woman also came behind the girl at this time and stood side by side with the burly middle-aged man. Of course, instead of standing side by side, it was better to say that her head and the burly middle-aged man's shoulder were standing side by side. At this time, the 2 elders of the Chunyang school naturally saw that the girl was the leader of the 3 people in front of them. "We have no malice toward the Chunyang school." The girl's voice was soft like a spring breeze. "If we have disturbed you before, I would like to apologize to you. We'll leave now." As her voice fell, the girl glanced reluctantly in the direction of the Chunyang school's encampment behind the two elders of the Chunyang school, sighed softly, and immediately turned to leave. The burly middle-aged man and the beautiful woman also left. The burly middle-aged man was the last to follow. Before he followed, he glanced at Elder Jing Su of the Chunyang school. Although his eyes were calm, they made Elder Jing Su feel a certain amount of pressure. This person is definitely not an ordinary inferior divine emperor. His heart trembled. He might not even be a lower god emperor. In the entire Chunyang school, he had only felt this kind of feeling from a few god emperors and a lower god emperor from Chunyang school. The lower god emperor of their Chunyang school was the publicly acknowledged number one person below the middle god emperor, the son of the Yunfeng bloodline's ancestor, Zhen Pingfan. After watching the three people leave, Elder Lingshu couldn't help but look at Elder Jingshu and ask, "Granduncle, who do you think they are? That girl seems to be staring in the direction of our Chunyang school. I noticed her a long time ago. If she hadn't approached our Chunyang school, I wouldn't have shown up to intercept and warn her." When Elder Ling Su reached the end of his sentence, he paused for a moment before continuing with a bitter smile. "I originally intended to use my divine consciousness to investigate the young lady and the beautiful lady behind her. I never expected that divine emperor expert to make a move and directly destroy my divine consciousness." Hearing Elder Lingshu's words, Elder Jingshu shook her head gently. "I don't know either. However, at least I can be sure that they don't have any malicious intentions. Well, you continue patrolling. I'll go back first." As soon as she finished speaking, Elder Jingshu left. On the other side, not long after the young lady left Chunyang school with the beautiful lady and the burly middle-aged man, the young lady looked at the beautiful lady and said, "Aunt Shin, I don't want to fly anymore. Take out the spaceship." "Yes, Mississippi." Hearing this, the beautiful lady looked at the young lady with a doting smile and then took out a spaceship. After boarding the spaceship, the young lady and the beautiful lady sat cross-legged on the side, while the burly middle-aged man stood near the bow of the spaceship and scanned the surroundings vigilantly. "Miss, you don't have to worry." The beautiful lady smiled bitterly and said, "Young Master Ling Tian will be fine." "I know." The young lady nodded gently. "I just miss my brother. However, my brother has gone to Chunyang school now. It won't be long before I can see him again. Now he doesn't know me. The next time we meet he will definitely know me." As the young lady spoke, a smile finally appeared on her face. "That's natural." The beautiful lady nodded. "I'm really looking forward to it." The young lady's eyes were filled with strong anticipation. "At that time, my brother will no longer look at me like I'm a stranger." Chunyang School, Jingming Island. The news about Duan Ling Tian successfully passing the True Martial Disciple assessment and becoming a new True Martial Disciple, as well as receiving preferential treatment from the sect and being given a lot of resources, spread throughout Chunyang School and also to Jingming Island. "That Duan Ling Tian has just entered the sect and received so many resources that I've been dreaming of?" After Lan Shilin heard the news, his face instantly turned gloomy, and his eyes were filled with intense jealousy. "I'm going to find my great-grandfather." Taking a deep breath, Lan Shilin suppressed the flames of jealousy in his heart with great difficulty. Then he flew out and headed toward his great-grandfather, who was also the patriarch of the righteous lineage, where he cultivated. Behind him, Elder Lingshu Lu Hui shook his head somewhat helplessly. However, he did not say much and silently followed behind Lan Shilin. If he had followed Lan Shilin in the beginning, he would have said a few words to Lan Shilin and analyzed this matter for him. However, now that he had followed Lan Shilin for many years, he knew what kind of temper Lan Shilin had. Apart from the Grandmaster, he would not listen to anyone else. Not long after, Lu Hui followed Lan Shilin to meet the patriarch of the righteous lineage, Lan Jingming. Lan Jingming did not look like an old man. He had the appearance of a middle-aged man. He had a medium build and wore a light blue robe. He was handsome and had a long beard on his chin. He looked like a handsome middle-aged man. "Grandmaster." Lu Hui took the lead and bowed respectfully to Lan Jingming. Lan Jingming nodded and smiled at Lu Hui. "Lu Hui, has your cultivation been going well recently?" "It's been going well." Lu Hui responded respectfully. Lan Jingming nodded. "This kid Shilin has troubled you." "Grandmaster, it's what I should do," Lu Hui hurriedly said. Lan Jingming nodded again. At the same time, he looked at Lan Shilin with a smile on his face. "Shilin, you came to see your great-grandfather in such a hurry. Did something happen?" "Great-grandfather?" Lan Shilin was still suppressing his emotions at first. Now that he heard Lan Jingming's words, he immediately exploded. What? That Duan Ling Tian has just entered the sect. What right does he have to receive the sect's resources? If those resources were given to me, I would have the confidence to raise my strength to the next level before the 7 prefectures banquet. Lan Shilin said in a low voice. I heard that this decision was unanimously passed by the decision-makers in a meeting. Even our righteous lineage's Grandmaster and Grandmaster in the decision-makers have agreed to this decision. Why? The current Lan Shilin was completely consumed by his jealousy. His expression was gloomy and ugly. However, in the face of Lan Shilin's loss of composure, Lan Jingming remained indifferent. He maintained a faint smile on his face until Lan Shilin stopped talking. Then he slowly asked, Are you done? Great-grandfather, don't you think it's unfair? Lan Shilin asked with a frown. Now, he could see that his great-grandfather obviously knew about this matter. However, he did not seem to find it inappropriate at all. What about his great-grandfather who doted on him the most? Unfair? How is it unfair? Lan Jingming still had a faint smile on his face. He looked at Lan Shilin with interest and asked. Lan Shilin was already in a bad mood when he saw that his great-grandfather did not stand up for him. Now that he heard this, he was instantly furious. He's just a newcomer. What right does he have to receive such treatment? He's a lower divine emperor. I'm also a lower divine emperor. He's a true martial disciple. I'm also a true martial disciple. Why? Lan Shilin asked in a deep voice. Lan Jingming, on the other hand, was not angered by Lan Shilin's overbearing attitude. Instead, he calmly said, Duan Ling Tian, less than 3,000 years old, from a Devata realm. The first time he appeared was in the mountains east of the East Ridge Prefecture. After that, he went to Heavenly Wind City several times and entered the Hidden Fog Academy under the Hidden Fog sect, a divine emperor-level sect under the Tianlong clan. At that time he was not even a god king. Now, it's less than 100 years since he became a god king. In less than 100 years, from a god to a lower divine emperor. Do you think you can do it? Lan Jingming looked at Lan Shilin and asked with a smile. Less than 100 years? Lan Shilin's expression changed when he heard Lan Jingming's words. How's that possible? Even the prodigies of those powerful godly venerable level sects wouldn't have such a cultivation speed. Duan Ling Tian is just a nobody from a Devata realm. How could he do that? Moreover, he's almost 3,000 years old now. In other words, he was just an ordinary god 100 years ago. Even if he obtained the inheritance of a supreme powerhouse, it's impossible for him to improve so much in such a short time, right? Lan Jingming nodded in relief when he heard Lan Shilin's words. At least his great-grandson was not blinded by jealousy. He was still rational. Of course, it's impossible for him to obtain the inheritance of a supreme powerhouse. Lan Jingming smiled faintly. Even the prodigies of those godly venerable level sects can improve so much because their parents are godly venerable level powerhouses. Their bloodline is powerful and their innate talent is great. As for Duan Ling Tian, he's from a Devata realm. Moreover, he doesn't have the bloodline of a native of a realm of gods. Even if he obtained the inheritance of a supreme powerhouse, it's impossible for him to improve so much. Unless it's an ultimate powerhouse who's good at alchemy and whose alchemy skills have reached a certain level and left him with a large number of ultimate divine pills, it's impossible for him to improve so quickly. Of course, the prerequisite is that his talent is not weak. Chapter 3954. The inheritance left behind by a supreme powerhouse who specializes in pill refinement? Upon hearing Lan Jingming's words, Lan Shilin's eyes widened. Greed gleamed in his eyes as he asked, Great-grandfather, do you mean Duan Ling Tian obtained the inheritance left behind by a supreme powerhouse who specializes in pill refinement? It's just a possibility. Lan Jingming smiled faintly. Apart from that, there are other possibilities. It's just that I can't think of any. The world is so big. There are many things that I don't know about. Duan Ling Tian was able to achieve such a shocking feat in just 100 years. This means he's a person with great luck. At the same time, his innate talent and comprehension are not weak. Putting everything else aside, just the energy of the law that he has mastered is stronger than yours. When Lan Jingming reached the end of his sentence, he looked deeply at Lan Shilin and said, Not only is his cultivation base comparable to yours, but the energy of the law that he has mastered is also stronger than yours. Although you're already a medium divine emperor, if you really fight him, you might not be able to defeat him. Upon hearing Lan Jingming's words, Lan Shilin was displeased. Great-grandfather, you're underestimating me. Although I've just become a medium divine emperor not long ago, I think my strength is much stronger than ordinary medium divine emperors. It's easy for me to kill 1 or 2 ordinary medium divine emperors. I've seen the scryer recordings of Duanling Tian killing 2 medium divine emperors in the Tianlong clan. If it were me, I could also kill those 2 people. Based on Lan Xilin's words, it was clear he was confident in his strength. I believe you. Lan Jingming nodded. However, ask yourself, if it were you, would you be able to do it as cleanly as him? Although Duanling Tian is young, I can see the shadow of an old monster who has lived for tens of thousands of years from his attacks. He must have been a veteran when he was in the Devata realm. Lan Jingming's words seemed to confirm this. Great-grandfather, it seems like we're going off topic. Lan Xilin frowned. How could he not see through his great-grandfather's words? It was just that he was unwilling to admit that he was inferior to Duanling Tian, who was not even 3,000 years old. Otherwise, wouldn't he have lived a few thousand years longer than others? Not really. Lan Jingming smiled faintly. You came to me because you feel that Duanling Tian took the sect's resources and felt that it was unfair. I'm saying this mainly because I want you to see Duanling Tian clearly, and at the same time, recognize yourself clearly. But now it seems that you still haven't seen it clearly, or perhaps you're unwilling to see it clearly. Celine, sometimes being able to see through others and recognize yourself is a good thing, not a bad thing. Don't ruin yourself because of that laughable bit of pride. This time, Lan Jingming's gaze sharpened as he spoke, and his tone became more solemn in an instant. When Lan Xilin heard this, he was no longer as overbearing as before. His entire being seemed to have become much more obedient in an instant. Yes, great-grandfather. Seeing Lan Xilin's reaction, Lan Jingming sighed and said, This time your few martial granduncles and martial granduncles who are in the decision-making level have sent me a message to discuss the matter of the sect spending a huge amount of resources on Duanling Tian. My opinion is to agree. What? Lan Xilin had just found out about this matter and asked instinctively. However, he still suppressed his voice and did not overreact. It's an irresistible trend. In an instant, Lan Jingming's eyes became deep and profound. It's because the 7 branches that have void-pierced stage-old ancestors, including the Cloud Peak, will support this decision. Under such circumstances, the other branches can only go with the flow. If anyone rejects this decision, they might be seen as not thinking for the sect. That person's intentions are punishable. When Lan Xilin spoke up to this point, he saw Lan Jingming opening his mouth as though he wanted to say something. However, Lan Jingming did not allow him to speak as he continued. The innate talent and comprehension ability that Duanling Tian displayed was too shocking. Therefore, they've completely placed their hopes on Duanling Tian in the 7 Mansions banquet 50 years later. You should also know that, including you, even the few true martial disciples who are stronger than you have a slim chance of getting into the top 10 of the 7 prefectures grand banquet. However, Duanling Tian has a slim chance. And this slim chance depends on whether he can reach the middle divine emperor realm within 50 years. Judging from his combat power as a low divine emperor, if he reaches the middle divine emperor realm, he will definitely get into the top 10 of the 7 prefectures grand banquet. Lan Jingming's gaze towards Lan Xilin was filled with affection. Lan Xilin, ask yourself, when you were a low divine emperor, could you withstand a full-powered attack from him? As soon as Lan Jingming said this, Lan Xilin became silent. After a while he said, Great-grandfather, Lan Xilin understands. Lan Xilin didn't consider this matter thoroughly and was blinded by jealousy. The current Lan Xilin looked like he was admitting his mistake. You? Lan Jingming shook his head and sighed. It's also because I spoiled you too much. Otherwise you wouldn't feel wrong because of this matter. When Lan Xilin lowered his head after hearing this, Lan Jingming continued, I also heard that Duanling Tian went to look for you with my junior brother Zhen when he just arrived at Chunyang School. I hope that this matter will end here. Whether it's Duanling Tian or the 2 from the Heaven Illumination sect, you shouldn't act rashly. At this point, Lan Jingming looked at Lu Hui who was standing at the side and said, Lu Hui, if he asks you to deal with Duanling Tian and the 2 from the Heaven Illumination sect, reject him directly and inform me through a message. Yes, Grandmaster. Lu Hui hurriedly responded. At the same time, a bitter smile appeared at the corner of his mouth. He knew that from today onwards he could no longer blindly listen to Lan Xilin on some matters. Great-grandfather, are you afraid of Duanling Tian? At this moment, Lan Xilin's arrogance seemed to have returned. He had accepted that Duanling Tian had obtained those resources. But now, his great-grandfather actually asked him not to take revenge on Duan Tian and the two from the Heaven Illumination sect? I'm not afraid. Lan Jingming shook his head. It's a question of whether it's worth it or not. Now that Duan Tian has high hopes placed on him by the sect will definitely not allow anything to happen to him before the Seven-Mansion banquet. If you make a move on him at this time, no matter if you succeed or fail, as long as there are traces left behind and you didn't do a clean job, the sect won't let you go. By that time, the few Void Peer stage elders might want you dead. Do you think that your great-grandfather, a clear Void stage elder, can save you at that time? As soon as Lan Jingming said that, Lan Shilin immediately fell silent. Also, Lan Jingming continued, for people like Duan Tian, regardless of whether he obtained the inheritance of a supreme expert or had other heaven-shaking fortuitous encounters. All in all, he is a person with great luck. This kind of person, unless you can be sure that you will destroy him. Otherwise, as long as he has the slightest chance of survival and escapes from your hands, what awaits you will be his revenge after he rises to power. Lan Shilin, listen to your great-grandfather's advice. There is actually no conflict between you and him. There is no need to ruin yourself just because of a moment of anger. As Lan Jingming spoke, his expression became more and more serious. Yes, great-grandfather. Although Lan Shilin was still a little unconvinced in his heart, he hurriedly agreed because he could see that this great-grandfather of his was serious now. This great-grandfather of his usually spoke to him softly. It was rare for him to be so serious. If you can let it go, having one more friend like him is better than having one more enemy like him. When Lan Jingming said that, the gaze he used to look at Lan Shilin became much sharper, as if he could see through Lan Shilin's heart. Don't try to seize his fortune and luck. Some things are suitable for him but not necessarily for you. Even if he has treasures in his hands, you won't be able to get anything even if you kill him after he destroys his own storage ring. Besides, you can't be sure if he has the confidence to do so. Don't think about taking such a risk. For Duan Tian, his days at Chunyang School were definitely the most relaxed and comfortable since he came to the Mystic Handle land in the Plains of Gods. Other than the large amount of resources that Chunyang School gave him, the son of the Yun Peak's ancestor, Jingshu Elder Zhen Pingfan, also told him that he could tell him if he needed anything. He said that if his father received him, the Yun Peak would do their best to satisfy his needs. Under such circumstances, no matter what Duan Tian wanted, the Yun Peak would cooperate and give it to him, unless it was something that the Yun Peak's bloodline could not obtain. In addition, if Duan Tian wanted to go out to refine pills, Zhen Pingfan would personally accompany him. Zhen Pingfan did not barge in to refine pills. Therefore, even if Duan Tian had tampered with the pill tribulation caused by refining 2 Pinnacle King-level divine pills at the same time to cover up the pill tribulation caused by refining 1 Pinnacle King-level divine pill, he would not discover anything. Just like that, the days passed. Meanwhile, Duan Tian's cultivation base continued to improve. Duan Tian. One day, Duan Tian received a message from Qin Wuyang. The divine artifact master from Yun Peak that I mentioned to you earlier has returned. The materials required to refine the space-piercing divine shuttle have been prepared. I'll ask him to refine the space-piercing divine shuttle for you now. I've asked him and he'll give you 3 space-piercing divine shuttles within a month. Duan Tian's eyes lit up when he heard Qin Wuyang's message. He could finally return to the Devata realms and the mundane realms. Naturally, it was his clone that returned. Although his clone could return to the Mystic Handle land through the space-piercing divine shuttle, it might not necessarily return to the Mystic Handle land. There were more than a dozen realms of gods. The probability of him returning to the Mystic Handle land was not high. Moreover, he did not want to take the risk. Most importantly, it was enough for his clone to return. Chapter 3955. With the godly space-piercing shuttle at hand, Duan Tian thought of his master, Feng Qingyang. I wonder if master has managed to free himself from Mi Xian? If he has, he should have returned to solitary destructive heaven by now. If he hasn't, I'm sure he hasn't returned. Duan Tian's heart sank when he thought of this. At this moment, the soul pearl in his hand that belonged to his master, Feng Qingyang, had completely dissipated. Due to this reason, he could not confirm whether his master was still alive or not. Master will definitely be fine. However, if master still hasn't returned and his soul is still suppressed by Mi Xian and his body is still occupied, I'll have to make a trip to the netherworld. The moment Duan Tian thought of this, he frowned. However, even if I enter the netherworld and look for master, It won't be easy for me to force Mi Xian's soul out. For a moment, Duan Ling Tian's face was filled with worry. However, he soon thought of something and his eyes narrowed. How could I have forgotten about Elder Zhen? He's the quiet void elder of Chunyang School and an emperor god expert. He must be more knowledgeable than I am. He might have a way. When he thought of Zhen Pingfan, Duan Ling Tian could no longer suppress the restlessness in his heart. He left his residence and went to Zhen Pingfan's residence. He had found out about Zhen Pingfan's cultivation place some time ago and had been there several times. Elder Zhen. However, when he arrived outside Zhen Pingfan's cultivation place, Duan Ling Tian still sent him a message to greet him. Otherwise, the formation that enveloped Zhen Pingfan's cultivation place would prevent him from entering. Duan Ling Tian? When he received Duan Ling Tian's message and heard the urgency in Duan Ling Tian's voice, Zhen Pingfan could not help but ask, "What's wrong? What's the matter?" "Elder Zhen, I have an urgent matter to discuss with you. I'm outside your cultivation area right now," Duan Ling Tian said. Almost as soon as Duan Ling Tian finished speaking, a ripple suddenly appeared in the air above the mansion located in a valley in front of him. Then the scene inside changed quite a bit. Then a figure shot out like a ghost and arrived in front of Duan Ling Tian in the blink of an eye. "What? Did someone bully you in Chunyang School? Don't worry. As long as you're in the right, I, Zhen Pingfan, will let him know the consequences of bullying me, Zhen Pingfan." As Zhen Pingfan finished speaking, an ominous glint flashed in his eyes. His aura also underwent a great change in an instant. The originally peaceful aura became incomparably violent in the blink of an eye. Upon hearing Zhen Pingfan's words, Duan Ling Tian knew Zhen Pingfan had misunderstood him. He smiled wryly and said, "Elder Zhen, no one bullied me. I'm looking for you because I have some private matters to discuss with you." Upon hearing this, Zhen Pingfan's violent aura disappeared, and he became as gentle as before. "I see. What is it?" Zhen Pingfan asked curiously. "Something happened to my master in a Devata realm." Duan Ling Tian did not beat around the bush. He directly told Zhen Pingfan about his master, Feng Qingyang, and the origin of Mi Xian who had taken over his master's body. Zhen Pingfan's eyes lit up when he heard Duan Ling Tian mention that Mi Xian was from the Dead Spirit clan. At the same time he was hesitant to speak. However, he did not interrupt Duan Ling Tian in the end. Only after Duan Ling Tian had finished speaking did he ask in an urgent tone, "Are you sure the spirit life form you mentioned is a member of the Spectre clan from the Netherworld? Moreover, he's a divine emperor from the Dead Spirit clan?" Zhen Pingfan's eyes shone brightly when he spoke. However, this caused Duan Ling Tian to be puzzled. He did not know why Elder Zhen would suddenly become so agitated. However, he still nodded affirmatively. "I can confirm this. That person from the Dead Soul race once attacked me when he was still a God King. I heard him say with my own ears that he destroyed the Dead Spirit clan and devoured all of them. That's how he could reach the godly emperor realm," Duan Ling Tian said. "You said he tried to possess someone else's body, but you destroyed his body and his soul escaped?" Zhen Pingfan asked again. "Yes." Duan Ling Tian nodded. He was very sure of this. It seems that because of this, he used up the one and only chance of perfect possession in the Dead Spirit clan. As a result, although he possessed someone else's body, he was unable to use his full strength and was greatly restricted. My master was only a higher god king, and he was unable to kill him. Duan Ling Tian, you've given Chunyang School a great gift this time," Zhen Pingfan said with a grin. Duan Ling Tian was stunned. He did not understand what Zhen Pingfan meant. "Elder Zhen, I don't understand what you mean." "You'll understand soon, as long as you can find that person from the Dead Spirit clan," Zhen Pingfan said. Duan Ling Tian was even more confused now. "Little fan." Just as Duan Ling Tian was at a loss, an old but powerful voice rang in his ears. At the same time, it also reached Zhen Pingfan's ears. "I've already informed your martial uncle Yi. Now bring Duan Ling Tian with you." As soon as Duan Ling Tian regained his senses, Zhen Pingfan looked at him and said with a smile, "Duan Ling Tian, my father asked me to bring you over. It just so happens that you haven't met my father yet. Let's meet him together this time. Today I'll bring you to meet two Void Pierce stage elders." As soon as Zhen Pingfan said that, Duan Ling Tian was unsurprisingly shocked. Just now, when he heard how that voice addressed Zhen Pingfan, he had already vaguely guessed that the other party should be the Void Pierce stage old ancestor of Yunfeng's lineage whom he had yet to meet. And according to what the other party said, he would be able to meet him later. And now, according to what Zhen Pingfan said, He would actually be able to meet another void-pierced stage elder later? Is it the martial Uncle Yi of Elder Zhen Pingfan, whom Elder Zhen Yunfeng mentioned just now? Just as he thought of that, Duan Lingtian sensed an invisible force assaulting his body. In the blink of an eye, it brought him along with the wind. It was none other than Zhen Pingfan who personally brought him to meet the old ancestor of Yunfeng's lineage after seeing him in a daze. Elder Zhen, the person whom Elder Zhen Yunfeng mentioned just now. Could it be the one from the hidden sword lineage? On the way, Duan Lingtian finally regained his senses and asked curiously at the same time. Among all the void-pierced stage elders in our Chunyang school, he's the only one with the surname Yi. Zhen Pingfan nodded in response. After receiving confirmation, even though Duan Lingtian thought that he was a calm person, his heart could not help but palpitate a little at this moment. Void-pierced stage elders were the existences with the highest status in Chunyang school. In the entire Chunyang school there were only 7 of them on the surface. As for whether there were more in secret, Duan Lingtian did not know. However, even if there were more in secret, Duan Lingtian felt that there would not be many of them. Later he would meet the 2 void-pierced stage elders of Chunyang school in one go. We're here. As Zhen Pingfan brought him to a stop, Duan Lingtian discovered that they had arrived at the depths of Yunfeng Island where Yunfeng's lineage was located. It was inside a huge canyon. The canyon was very big. It was filled with greenery everywhere. The chirping of birds and the fragrance of flowers were everywhere. There was also smoke rising in spirals from kitchen chimneys. It was like a paradise. Duan Lingtian followed Zhen Pingfan and went deep into the canyon, startling a flock of birds. After a while, Duan Lingtian followed Zhen Pingfan and landed on a spacious stone platform in the canyon. On top of the stone platform, there was a spacious mansion. At this moment, there were 2 figures standing in the air above the mansion. One was an old man with white hair and a ruddy complexion. The other was a handsome young man with straight eyebrows. The old man was wearing a grayish-white long robe. There were several complicated patterns embroidered on the robe. At least, Duan Lingtian could not tell what those patterns were and what they symbolized. As for the young man, he was wearing a light golden long robe. Every corner of the long robe was embroidered with silver edges. There were also swords embroidered on the silver edges. At first glance, the 2 of them looked like 2 extremes. Father. After Zhen Pingfan brought Duan Lingtian closer, he first bowed respectfully to the old man. Then he looked at the young man beside the old man and bowed respectfully. Greetings, martial Uncle Yi. Just a moment ago, Duan Lingtian had already guessed who the 2 of them were. The old man was undoubtedly the old ancestor of the Yun Peak clan, the void-pierced stage elder Zhen Yunfeng. The young man was the old ancestor of the Hidden Sword clan, the void-pierced stage elder Yi Qinfeng. At this moment, Duan Lingtian realized that the 2 void-pierced stage elders in front of him did not pay much attention to Zhen Pingfan when he bowed. Instead, their gazes fell on him. Greetings, Elder Zhen and Elder Yi. Duan Lingtian followed behind Zhen Pingfan and bowed slightly to the 2 elders. Duan Lingtian. As Yi Qinfeng spoke, Duan Lingtian felt as if there were 10,000 swords in front of him. They were incomparably sharp. However, just as his expression changed and he was about to raise his hand to defend himself, that awe-inspiring sword intent vanished in an instant. However, Yi Qinfeng had already arrived in front of him at this moment. A pair of glittering eyes looked straight into his eyes. Duan Lingtian, are you sure that this is a Divine Emperor Realm Ghost Clan member of the Dead Spirit Clan who used his one and only chance of perfect possession in his life? Duan Lingtian did not expect Yi Qinfeng to suddenly come close to him. He also did not expect that he would ask such a question. However, now he finally understood why the old ancestor of the Yun Peak clan Zhen Yunfeng suddenly wanted to see him and why the old ancestor of the Hidden Sword clan Yi Qinfeng would appear here. It turned out that it was all because of the words he said to Zhen Pingfan before. Elder Yi, I can be sure of this. Duan Lingtian nodded with great certainty. It's not the first time I've dealt with him. However, Elder Yi, he is just a Divine Emperor Realm Ghost Clan member of the Dead Spirit Clan. Is he worthy of your attention? In Duan Lingtian's opinion, that Dead Spirit Clan member was just a spiritual life form. In terms of combat power, he was not a match for ordinary mid-level Divine Emperors. Yet, it was this spiritual life form that alarmed 2 void-pierced stage elders and 2 god emperors of the Chunyang school. Moreover, they were 2 mid-level god emperors. Chapter 3956. Duan Lingtian asked Zhen Pingfan, the old ancestor of the Hidden Sword progeny and the void-pierced stage elder, in disbelief. Duanling Tian, you've given Chunyang School a great gift. From the looks of it, Zhen Yunfeng's request to see him and Yi Qinfeng's appearance were most likely related to Zhen Pingfan's words. Mi Xian is a great gift to Chunyang School? Duanling Tian was even more confused now. Mi Xian was just the soul of a medium divine emperor. What was the use of Mi Xian to Chunyang School? If he were in the Devata realms he could understand. After all, many souls in the netherworld could be enslaved and injected into prominent celestial weapons to turn them into weapon spirits. However, things like artifact spirits could not be attached to divine artifacts. The pressure of divine artifacts was enough to easily crush them. Divine artifacts usually had their own artifact souls. At this moment, Duanling Tian confirmed Mi Xian's words. A hint of excitement could be seen in Yi Qinfeng's eyes. At the same time, his voice became gentler as he said, Duanlingdun, to ordinary people, a divine emperor from the dead spirit clan is nothing special. However, it's very important to the hidden sword progeny. The hidden sword progeny has a unique divine sword soul nourishing technique. The divine sword in my hand can only be considered as a half-complete sword soul. A divine emperor from the dead spirit clan is a great nourishment for it. However, it's basically impossible for a divine emperor from the dead spirit clan to appear. Moreover, even if it appears, as long as it doesn't use its once-in-a-lifetime perfect possession opportunity, it's useless to me. But if it were to use up that opportunity, I am extremely confident that it would become the best nourishment for the sword soul of my divine sword, allowing it to completely take form. A hint of excitement could be heard in Yi Qinfeng's voice when he reached the end of his sentence. Hearing Yi Qinfeng's words, Zhen Yunfeng and Zhen Pingfan were still calm. Obviously they had known about this for a long time. However, when Duanling Tian heard Yi Qinfeng's words, his pupils shrank as his heart surged. Of course he knew what Yi Qinfeng was implying. In other words, even though the sword soul in Yi Qinfeng's divine sword had been born, it wasn't complete yet. However, once Yi Qinfeng used the unique divine sword soul nurturing art of the hidden sword lineage and injected Mi Xian, a god emperor of the dead spirit race, into his sword soul would be complete. Once the sword spirit in Yi Qinfeng's godly sword was fully formed, it would become a top-grade godly sword on the same level as his 7 orifices exquisite sword. That was because it was a high-grade divine sword that had given birth to a complete sword soul. Moreover, the power that Yi Qinfeng could unleash was not something that his 7 orifices exquisite sword could compare with. I can't believe that the Zhongjia lineage of Chunyang School has such a magical sword soul nourishing method. Duanling Tian's heart trembled. He couldn't calm down for a long time. This had already overturned some of his previous understandings. Nothing is too strange in this vast world. Duanling Tian sighed inwardly. Duanling Tian, if you help me find the dead spirit clansmen at the Divine Emperor stage, I, Yi Qinfeng, the hidden sword progeny, and the pure sun sect will owe you a favor. Yi Qinfeng added, in total I'll owe you 3 favors. To be honest, Duanling Tian didn't care about favors because it was his duty to get rid of Mi Xian. If Mi Xian could be of some use to Yi Qinfeng before he died, he would be more than happy to do him a favor. However, there was one thing Duanling Tian wanted to confirm. It was a rather important thing. Elder Yi, if that dead soul clansman becomes nourishment for the sword soul of your divine sword, will his memory and consciousness still exist? Hearing this, Yi Qinfeng smiled faintly, of course not. To put it bluntly, he's just nourishment for the sword soul of my divine sword. The sword soul of my divine sword hasn't fully developed, but it already has a basic consciousness. You don't have to worry about that. In the future you won't have a sword soul as an enemy for no reason. Moreover, even if his consciousness is still there, as the sword soul of my divine sword, I'll still be the master. Yi Qinfeng shook his head and smiled as though he knew what Duanling Tian was worried about. Duanling Tian smiled awkwardly when Yi Qinfeng saw through his thoughts. Then he asked curiously, Elder Yi, do you plan to return to the Devata realm with me? Yes. Yi Qinfeng nodded. Although the spatial tunnel between the realms of gods and the lower realms has been sealed, I can still return with you through the void-piercing divine shuttle. Elder Yi. Duanling Tian smiled wryly and said, originally, I didn't have to worry about anything with you making a trip. However, as far as I know, the natives of the realms of gods will have their strength suppressed as soon as they leave the realms of gods, right? Duanling Tian still remembered what his master, Feng Qingyang, had told him. Back then, the Yun clan's vile slave who chased after his master, Feng Qingyang, and forced his master, Feng Qingyang, to enter the Azura Hell was unable to kill his master, Feng Qingyang, because his strength was suppressed. Otherwise, with his identity as a member of a godly venerable clan in the divine offering land, even if he was just a slave, his strength would not be weak. It was said that the realms of gods were formed from the little worlds in the bodies of supreme powerhouses. The natives of the realms of gods who carried the bloodline of a supreme powerhouse would have their strength suppressed by the law set by the supreme powerhouse when they left the realms of gods for the lower realms of gods. The law was set by the supreme powerhouses to control their little worlds at will. It was similar to the heart demon blood oath in the realms of gods. It could also be understood as a kind of seal. Those who carried the bloodline of a supreme powerhouse would be able to travel to different planes of gods. In other words, they would be able to travel to different minor worlds within the bodies of supreme powerhouses. However, if they wanted to go to the lower realms of gods, their strength would be sealed. This was a rule set by the supreme powerhouses to prevent the natives of the realms of gods from going to the lower realms of gods to cause trouble. Most of the supreme powerhouses, including the earliest group of supreme powerhouses, came from the lower realms of gods. They regarded the lower realms of gods as their hometowns. Naturally, they did not want their hometowns to be destroyed. Ha! Before Zhen Pingfan could say anything, Zhen Pingfan burst out laughing. Duan Lingtian was confused by Zhen Pingfan's laughter. He looked at Zhen Pingfan in confusion. Could he be wrong? However, he remembered that the natives of the realms of gods would have their strength suppressed when they went to the lower realms of gods. There should be no mistake. Duan Lingtian. Zhen Pingfan smiled when he saw Duan Lingtian looking at him in confusion. Don't tell me you think you're the only one who came from the Devata realm? Upon hearing Zhen Pingfan's words, Duan Lingtian looked at Zhen Pingfan in surprise. Elder Yi, why you're from the Devata realm as well? Yi Chenfeng smiled faintly. To be precise, I'm from the mundane realm. Mundane realm. Upon hearing Yi Chenfeng's words, Duan Lingtian was filled with respect. As someone who came from the mundane realm, it was not easy for him to reach where he was today. And this person in front of him, who had walked out from the mundane plane, was already an emperor god expert. Duan Lingtian, if I'm not mistaken, you're from the mundane realm as well, right? Yi Chenfeng asked with a smile. Why do you think so, Elder Yi? Duan Lingtian was slightly surprised. Yi Chenfeng smiled and said, I've seen the scryer recording of you killing the 2 intermediate god emperors in the Tianlong clan. Although you didn't attack much at that time, your calmness shows that even if you're not a veteran, you're very experienced in battle. You're so experienced that even ordinary god emperors can't compare to you. That's why I'm guessing you're from the mundane realm as well. Yi Chenfeng said. Yes, I'm from the mundane realm. Duan Lingtian nodded. The Saint Realm and the Yanhuang realm are both considered my hometowns. The reason why he mentioned his hometowns was that Duan Lingtian thought that if Elder Yi was also from one of the 2 mundane realms, he might be able to take care of him in the future. I didn't expect you to be from the Yanhuang realm. Yi Chenfeng said in surprise. It's said that our Chunyang school's ancestor came from the Yanhuang realm. At this time, even Zhen Yunfeng and Zhen Pingfan looked at Duan Lingtian in surprise. They did not expect that Duan Lingtian and their Chunyang school's ancestor came from the same mundane realm. Our Chunyang school's ancestor is surnamed Lu? Duan Lingtian's pupils shrank slightly, and then he asked subconsciously. Yes, his surname is Lu. Yi Chenfeng nodded and then said in surprise, Could it be that you've heard of our Chunyang school's ancestor? Duan Lingtian smiled bitterly and said, In one of my hometowns, the Yanhuang realm, there's a legendary figure there. His Taoist title is Pure Sun, and his name is Lu Dongbin. That's our ancestor. Zhen Yunfeng's eyes lit up, and then he sighed with emotion. I really didn't expect that the genius that our Chunyang school recently accepted is from our ancestors' homeworld. Moreover, it might affect the upcoming 7 prefectures banquet. Could it be that our ancestors are protecting our Pure Sun sect from the unseen world? When Zhen Yunfeng said this, even Zhen Pingfan and Yi Chenfeng's eyes lit up. During this process, the relationship between Duan Lingtian and the 2 Void Peer stage elders of the Chunyang school became closer. After receiving confirmation, Duan Lingtian sighed with emotion. He did not expect his speculation to come true. Now that he thought about it, it seemed like many of the figures in the ancient myths and legends on Earth in his previous life were real. He had heard and seen many of them since he was in the Devata realms. After a long while, Duan Lingtian regained his senses. He looked at Yi Chenfeng and asked, Elder Yi, do you plan to send a clone with me or do you plan to go with me? Chapter 3957. Should he send his avatar or his true self? In Duan Lingtian's opinion, Yi Qinfeng had his reasons. If his avatar went, he would either bring his high-grade divine sword with him and use Mi Xian to nourish the sword soul in the lower realm, or find a way to bring Mi Xian back to the Chunyang school. Regardless, his avatar would have to return to the Chunyang school. If his true self went, it would be the same. Moreover, it would be safer on the way back to the Chunyang school. As for the Chunyang school, he could leave his avatar behind. Duan Lingtian did not think too much about the difficulty of Yi Qinfeng returning to the Mystic Gangland using the space-piercing divine shuttle. With Yi Qinfeng's strength, even if he went to another realm of gods using the space-piercing divine shuttle, he would still be able to return to the Mystic Gangland and the Chunyang school. Previously, when he was in the Linghu family, he learned from Linghu Renjia that Linghu Renfeng, the god emperor, had returned to the Mystic Gangland from the Divine Offering Land through a realm battlefield. The realm battlefield in the Mystic Gangland was not formed by a collision with the Divine Offering Land, so it was impossible to go from the Divine Offering Land to the Mystic Gangland through the realm battlefield. However, there was a spatial connection between the realm battlefields. Space was a very mysterious thing. The various planar battlefields were actually separated by a very long distance, but there was a connection between them that was similar to teleportation. One could go through one planar battlefield and enter another planar battlefield. It was not difficult to enter the realm of gods. Any god emperor could do it. However, if one wanted to go to the other realm of gods through the realm battlefield, one would have to rely on luck. If one was unlucky, it would take a lot of effort. This was because one would only know which realm of gods it was connected to after arriving at the other realm battlefield. One would have to ask someone in the other realm battlefield to find out. Duan Lingtian only knew this from Linghu Renjia. Of course, my true self will go. Facing Duan Lingtian's question, Yi Qinfeng smiled and said, sending a clone is not very safe. I'm also worried. Even if I were to go, under extremely bad luck, I would be able to make it back before the Feast of the Seven Prefectures. Yi Qinfeng said. You can't be careless. At this time, Zhen Yunfeng looked at Yi Qinfeng and said, there is no lack of upper god emperors and hierarch realm existences in the various battlefields. If you encounter them, be humble and tell them where you come from. Killing you won't give you any military merits. I'm sure they won't hold it against you. Hearing this, Yi Qinfeng could not help but smile bitterly. Senior brother Zhen, you don't need to remind me of this. I'm not a child. I haven't lived long enough. Don't forget, the last tribulation thunder of my last 1,000-year heavenly tribulation was still destroyed by my sword finger. I didn't even use my divine sword. Hearing Yi Qinfeng's words, Zhen Yunfeng's face froze. Then he cursed, get lost. Stop showing off your age and strength in front of me. Zhen Pingfan, who was at the side, saw Duan Lingtian looking at his father, Zhen Yunfeng, and his martial uncle Yi Qinfeng in astonishment. He could not help but explain through telepathy with a smile. Duan Lingtian, this martial uncle Yi of mine is actually younger than me. He is also recognized as the #1 genius of the Chunyang school in the past 100,000 years. During the Feast of the Seven Prefectures, if you can fight your way into the top 10, the Chunyang school will be able to get 2 spots that have the potential to advance to the upper god emperor realm. One of the spots will be reserved for martial uncle Yi. As for the other spot, it will require the other Void Peer stage elders to discuss and even compete for it. As soon as Zhen Pingfan said this, Duan Lingtian was naturally shocked again. This elder Yi, who came from the mundane world just like him, was actually such a genius? Since one of the 2 spots was reserved for him, it meant that the other Void Peer stage elders did not have any objections. It was obvious that his level of genius had definitely been recognized by the other Void Peer stage elders. Elder Yi, when do you plan to depart? Duan Lingtian looked at Yi Qinfeng and asked. I need to find 2 void-piercing divine shuttles first. Yi Qinfeng said while shaking his head. Previously, I rarely returned to the lower planes when the planar battlefield is open. Besides, I can get void-piercing divine shuttles everywhere. Therefore I didn't store them. Otherwise, if I store more of them, I might not even need to go through the planar battlefield to come back. Duan Lingtian naturally understood the meaning of Yi Qinfeng's words. What he meant was that if he had enough void-piercing divine shuttles, he could use one to return to the lower planes and the other to return to the planes of gods. The former and latter were both indiscriminate teleportation. Under such circumstances, if he had enough void-piercing divine shuttles, he could use the void-piercing divine shuttles to return to the lower planes after teleporting to the other planes of gods. Then he could use the void-piercing divine shuttles to return to the lower planes and teleport to the planes of gods again. This cycle would repeat endlessly. It would continue until he was lucky enough to return to the profound Handle land. After all, there were only a dozen or so planes of gods. There would always be a time when he was lucky. Of course, he needed enough void-piercing divine shuttles to do this. Elder Yi, if you don't have any void-piercing divine shuttles, I have a few for you. I'll give you one when the time comes. Duan Ling Tian said to Yi Chenfeng with a smile. Although Yi Chenfeng was planning to follow him back to the lower planes to nurture the soul of his divine sword, he had to deal with Mi Xian first before he could do that. Previously, when he sent his clone back, he could not do anything to Mi Xian. However, with Yi Chenfeng, a medium god emperor, following him back, dealing with Mi Xian would be a piece of cake. I'm really curious. I wonder what Mi Xian's expression will be if he sees me bringing a god emperor to him. It will definitely be interesting. When Duan Ling Tian thought of this, the corners of his mouth could not help but curl up into a faint smile. All right, Yi Chenfeng replied. At the same time, he took out a soul orb and exchanged it with Duan Ling Tian. When you depart, just send me a message. Also, if you encounter any problems in the Chunyang school in the future, as long as you're not in the wrong, just let me know and I'll solve them for you. Yi Chenfeng said, if the matter has nothing to do with those old fellows, even if you're in the wrong, I can still solve it for you. Although Yi Chenfeng's words were irresponsible and did not seem to be able to distinguish right from wrong, he dared to say this mainly because he knew Duan Ling Tian was not the kind of person who would make things difficult for him. Moreover, the Chunyang school had investigated Duan Ling Tian, and he knew the results of the investigation. Because of this, he knew Duan Ling Tian's character in the profound Handle land very well. If it were a reckless and brainless troublemaker, even if the other party could nurture his divine sword soul, he would definitely not make such a promise. Thank you, Elder Yi. Upon hearing Yi Chenfeng's words, Duan Ling Tian knew he would have another backer in the Chunyang school from today onward. If you're free, you can also visit the Hidden Sword Progeny. Most of the people in the Hidden Sword Progeny are from the Devata realms. Yi Chenfeng continued to say, you're also a non-native who came to the realms of gods from a lower secondary realm. I'm sure you'll have many things to talk about. I'll definitely visit you in the future. Duan Ling Tian hurriedly replied. He would definitely visit the Hidden Sword Progeny in the future. Who knew, if he went to the Hidden Sword lineage he might be able to gain a few more backers. According to what he knew, the Hidden Sword lineage also had two other God Emperor powerhouses, and they were both the Pure Sun sect's elders Jingshu. A month later, Duan Ling Tian's clone that had comprehended the law of space and Yi Chenfeng set off at almost the same time. However, due to the fact that only one person could enter the space-piercing divine shuttle at a time, the space-piercing divine shuttle would collapse if two people entered the space-piercing divine shuttle at once. Their next destination was also completely different. Elder Yi, let's meet at the heavenly palace of the solitary destructive heaven. Since Duan Ling Tian knew they would meet at different places, he had informed Yi Chenfeng beforehand that they would meet at the heavenly palace of the solitary destructive heaven. There were only 81 Devata realms in the world. It was not difficult to find the heavenly palace of the solitary destructive heaven. It was not difficult to find the heavenly palace of the solitary destructive heaven as well. All right. Yi Chenfeng nodded before he activated the space-piercing divine shuttle. At the same time, Duan Ling Tian opened a space-piercing divine shuttle and entered the heavenly palace of the solitary destructive heaven. In just a blink of an eye, the duo disappeared from the Chunyang school's estate. Naturally, Duan Ling Tian's clone that had left was only his clone. His main body remained in the Chunyang school. As for Yi Chenfeng, it was the exact opposite. His true body had left while his clone remained in the Pure Sun sect. In the undead world. Among the 7 deadliest places in the Devata realms, the undead world had the most souls. Due to the fact that it was not particularly dangerous, many powerhouses from the Devata realms would come here to capture souls and turn them into weapon spirits for their prominent celestial weapons. For this reason, powerhouses from the Devata realms were often attracted to the undead world. Naturally, many powerhouses from the Devata realms were unlucky enough to encounter the powerhouses from the undead world and were trapped in the undead world forever. After all, the undead world was one of the 7 deadliest places in the Devata realms. Although the undead world was not as dangerous as the Azura Hell, it was still filled with unknown dangers. At this moment, in the depths of the undead world, where powerhouses from the Devata realms did not dare to enter, there was a series of bloody mountains that were connected in a complicated manner. When looked at from afar in the sky, this expanse of Blood Mountain was like a mountain range that had been casually created by the Creator. There was no pattern to it and it was randomly distributed everywhere. However, there was a large group of people gathered in this place. They were the rare beings in the undead world who possessed fleshly bodies. Most of these beings were similar to humans. However, their skin color, body shape, and some of their features were slightly different. Some of them even resembled the aliens in the Earthlings' fantasies. In the belly of a relatively large blood mountain, in a huge cave, a magnificent palace was crouching there like a giant beast. At this moment, in a quiet room in the palace, a handsome young man was sitting cross-legged. He was muttering to himself in a strange tone. He muttered to himself, "Feng Qingyang, you should know that if this continues, it won't do you any good to me." Chapter 39:58. As soon as the handsome young man finished muttering to himself, his expression changed. It was no longer sinister. Instead, his expression became more natural. However, as his expression returned to normal, the handsome young man suddenly let out a cold snort. "Then let's continue to waste time." As soon as Feng Qingyang finished speaking, a sinister expression appeared on his face. "Feng Qingyang, I know what you're thinking. Do you think I didn't notice your soul is still growing stronger? You're thinking of breaking free from me after you've broken through to the Divine Emperor stage, right?" As soon as he finished speaking, he chuckled. "If that's what you think, then you're really too naive. Do you think you'll be able to break through and become a Divine Emperor? I'm sure you've sensed it in the past 2 months. Your soul that's close to breaking through to the Divine Emperor stage can no longer grow stronger, right? Perhaps you think your soul has reached a bottleneck, but is that really the case?" The handsome young man's originally evil face now had a sinister smile. No matter how one looked at it, it didn't match his handsome face at all. It gave people a feeling that it was a waste for such a soul to stay in such a good body. "You're the one who did this?" the handsome young man asked in a low voice after his expression returned to normal. At this moment, the two people talking to each other were none other than Feng Qingyang and Mi Xian, the dead spirit clansman who had taken over Feng Qingyang's body but did not fully control it. Previously, Mi Xian had entered Feng Qingyang's body in the heavenly palace of the solitary destructive heaven. Although he could have killed Feng Qingyang by paying a certain price, he did not do so. This was because he was interested in the fortuitous encounter Feng Qingyang had in the Azura Hell. Mi Xian was certain there was something good in the Azura Hell. Moreover, Feng Qingyang was able to come out of the Azura Hell unscathed every time. This meant he had a way to survive in the Azura Hell. Mi Xian was very curious about Feng Qingyang's secret. Of course, he wanted to know if Feng Qingyang's secret would be of any help to him. In other words, he wanted to see if he could seize this fortune of Feng Qingyang's. A low divine king had become a high divine king in just a few decades. Moreover, he was very close to becoming a divine emperor. Naturally, he wouldn't believe that there wasn't a huge secret behind this. "Not bad." Mi Xian indifferently said, "2 months ago, I had someone set up a soul sealing array to envelop the area we are currently in. You should know that this is the netherworld. What exists here are mainly spiritual life forms. Looking at the entire world, I'm afraid there's no place that understands the soul better than the life forms here. You, Feng Qingyang, want to play with souls in front of me, Mi Xian? You're still too young. Don't forget that I'm not just a member of the dead spirit race, but also the former patriarch of the dead spirit race." Mi Xian's face was filled with disdain and mockery as he spoke. This time, Feng Qingyang didn't respond to Mi Xian. However, Mi Xian clearly didn't intend to give up so easily. "Feng Qingyang, I'll give you 1 more year. If you still don't cooperate after a year, don't blame me for being merciless. After I kill you, I'll take control of your body, disguise myself as you, and kill all of your subordinates. Even your disciple, Duan Lingtian, may not be able to see through my disguise. Who knows, I might even be able to kill him. Don't doubt it. I've become very familiar with your soul in this period of time. I can imitate the aura of your soul." Almost as soon as Mi Xian finished speaking, his originally eerie face suddenly became calm and gentle. His eyes also became incomparably calm. In the blink of an eye, his aura underwent an earth-shattering change. "How is it? Does it look like me?" With a faint smile on his face, Mi Xian's voice was sharp at the beginning, but the latter half of his words completely transformed into Feng Qingyang's voice. "Mi Xian, if I fight you to the death now, even if you don't die, you'll definitely be crippled." Inside his body, Feng Qingyang's soul emitted waves of cold aura. "If this was when I had just returned to the netherworld, perhaps. But now, if you really want to die, I'll only be lightly injured at most. Half a year ago, my subordinates gave me this thing in the spatial ring." Mi Xian's eyes narrowed. In the next moment, a faint halo appeared around his soul. At first glance, it looked like a shield. The shield was light gold and surrounded by a halo of light. There were talismans, characters, and many complicated diagrams mixed together and constantly rotating. A sole defensive divine artifact. Feng Qingyang's voice sounding somewhat unwilling and cold. Not bad. At least you have some knowledge. Mi Xian sneered. Feng Qingyang, remember? I'll only give you 1 year. Think about it carefully for the next year. Don't make a mistake. Otherwise, you won't just be making a mistake for yourself, your subordinates, and even your disciple Duan Tian. Naturally, Duan Tian was unaware of everything that had happened in the Netherworld. Currently, Duan Tian was still cultivating in the Chunyang School in Tunglung Province in the Shengang land. Of course, this was his true body. As for his spatial law clone, he had once again used the space-piercing divine shuttle to cross the void in space and arrive at a lower plane. This time he appeared in a mundane plane. In this world, the number of mundane planes exceeded the imagination of ordinary people. They could be described as endless. This time, Duan Tian arrived in a mundane plane that was completely unfamiliar to him. However, it was very similar to a mundane plane he had come into contact with before. Yin Huang Plane. Whoosh, 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 whoosh. In the boundless starry sky, Duan Tian stepped out of a spatial rift that appeared out of thin air. At the same time, cannonballs whistled in the air as they crossed the starry sky and arrived at the other end. Duan Tian narrowed his eyes and saw a huge body that resembled an astral behemoth hovering in the starry sky not far away. This body was somewhat similar to some of the unpopular warships that Duan Tian had encountered in Yanhuang Plain, but it was more terrifying. Boom. Rumble. When the cannonballs landed on the planet in front of him, the entire planet shook violently. Smoke and dust rose into the air. At first, Duan Tian frowned slightly. In the next instant, he extended his divine consciousness and discovered that there was almost no life on the planet. The reason he said almost no life was because there was only one person on the planet. That person was constantly dodging the cannonballs that were locked onto him. One person attracted a warship? Duan Tian shook his head lightly. He did not intend to meddle in this matter. He narrowed his eyes and extended his divine consciousness to search for the weak point in the spatial barrier between the mundane realm and the Devata realm. As long as he could find the weak point, he would be able to break through the barrier and enter the mundane realm. Just as Duan Tian was scanning the area with his divine consciousness, a signal that resembled an ultrasonic wave swept across the starry sky and landed on Duan Tian. In the next instant, a commotion broke out in the warship. Reporting. There's an unidentified human in front. Reporting. The other party traveled through the starry sky with his physical body. It's obvious he's a super powerhouse as well. Could he be a helper of that person? Reporting. Should we attack him? Soon after, a tall figure appeared in the cockpit of the warship. It was a middle-aged man with a cold expression. His short, dark red hair was spiky and he looked extremely resolute. Turn on the loudspeaker. I want to talk to him. As soon as the middle-aged man finished speaking, he turned on the warship's loudspeaker. Then he said, "The purple-clad man in front, if you're not a helper of our target, please retreat 10 miles away. Otherwise, we'll treat you as a helper of that person and kill you as well." Duan Tian heard the middle-aged man's words. However, he was not bothered by it. He had no intention of leaving since he was still searching for the weak point in the spatial barrier between the mundane realm and the Devata realm. Soon after, the commander of the battleship saw Duan Tian's indifference and finally fired a few cannonballs at him. The cannonballs were like meteors as they locked onto Duan Tian. Boom. Rumble. However, when the cannonballs exploded and the dust settled, a shocking scene unfolded before everyone's eyes. The purple-clad young man stood there unscathed. Not even a crease could be seen on his robe. As for the explosive force of the cannonballs, they were blocked by the spatial storm in front of him. It was like a spatial wall that blocked all the attacks from the warship. For a moment, silence filled the cockpit of the warship. More than a dozen people looked at the monster-like figure outside the cabin's mirror. Some of them sucked in a breath of cold air and some of them swallowed hard. "Sir Commander, should we launch another attack?" One of the people controlling the warship asked in a low voice. Smack. In the next moment, the middle-aged man slapped him on the head. "I'll kill anyone who dares to act rashly." At the same time, the middle-aged man said through the loudspeaker, "Sir, we've misunderstood you. We're willing to compensate you. Please." However, before he could finish speaking, he saw the purple-clad figure had vanished into thin air like a ghost. The people in the cockpit were stunned. Where did he go? Is he a human or a ghost? Duan Lingtian, naturally, would not bother with the people from the mundane realms. Even if the attacks landed on him, they would not be able to harm him at all. However, his robe would be affected since it was a real robe and not one formed from divine energy. Compared to a robe formed from divine energy, Duan Lingtian preferred to wear a real robe. It was made of cotton and was very comfortable. Chapter 3959. Naturally, the Duan Lingtian who had come to the mundane realm was only a law clone. However, before the law clone left, Duan Lingtian had dressed it in a real robe with just a thought. Naturally, the robe could not be connected to the body of his law clone. However, since his law clone was destined to stay in the lower realms, there was no need for him to worry about that. I finally found it. Duan Lingtian extended his divine consciousness for a while before he finally found the weak point in the spatial barrier between the mundane realm and the Devata realm. Then he broke through the barrier and traveled to the nearby Devata realm. Duan Lingtian had been to this Devata realm in the past. Back then, he had traveled to almost all the Devata realms in search of his family. He had only missed a few Devata realms. Another small place? Duan Lingtian felt helpless when he discovered his law clone had returned to a remote place in the Devata realm. There was no transportation formation in this remote place at all. It seems like it'll take some time before I can reach the transportation formation in the Devata realm. Duan Lingtian sighed helplessly as he made his way to a more prosperous place with a transportation formation in the Devata realm. While Duan Lingtian was searching for a Devata realm transportation formation to head to the heavenly palace of the solitary destructive heaven, a voice suddenly rang out. However, someone had arrived at the heavenly palace of the solitary destructive heaven ahead of him. Compared to the heavenly palace of the solitary destructive heaven that had been reduced to rubble, the heavenly palace of the solitary destructive heaven had been refurbished. Whether it was the landmark buildings or the entrance, everything had been restored. This was done under the supervision of the elders of the heavenly palace of the solitary destructive heaven. Swoosh. Outside the entrance of the heavenly palace of the solitary destructive heaven, two elders of the heavenly palace of the solitary destructive heaven who were guarding the entrance suddenly saw a figure in front of them. It was a young man dressed in a long golden robe. The young man had sharp eyebrows and was as handsome as jade. He had a graceful bearing. He looked in the direction of the heavenly palace of the solitary destructive heaven. After a while he muttered to himself, "It seems like Duan Lingtian hasn't arrived yet. In that case I'll wait for him here." The young man sat cross-legged on the ground and closed his eyes to meditate. Upon seeing this, the two elders who were guarding the entrance of the heavenly palace of the solitary destructive heaven frowned. "Who's that? Why is he meditating outside the heavenly palace of the solitary destructive heaven? What's he doing here? Is he looking for someone? Is he waiting for someone? I don't know. Let's wait and see." The heavenly palace of the solitary destructive heaven did not to interfere with the young man Lingtian's. Perhaps he was looking for someone? However, as time passed, more than an hour had passed, and they saw that no one had come out to meet the golden-robed young man. They immediately felt even more strange. He is not looking to look for someone to search heavenly to Medto Lingtian to Medto the heavens to be heavens two's heavenly heavens is the heave? He heaven be to waits. A moment later, one of the elders on duty flew out and was about to approach the golden-robed young man to warn him to leave. However, the moment he moved, the golden-robed young man suddenly opened his eyes. With just an indifferent glance, he caused the elder on duty to instantly stop. At the same time he felt his entire body being pressured by an invisible force, causing him to almost suffocate. At the same time, he discovered that the celestial origin energy in his body had been completely suppressed. He could not use it at all. It was even to the extent that the reason he was able to remain in midair was all thanks to the invisible energy that had been extended by his opponent. Otherwise, he who couldn't utilize his celestial origin energy would have fallen from the sky a long time ago. "Lord Ming Luo, I've been attacked outside the mountain gate. Help." The elder who was on duty immediately sent a message to the strongest person in the heavenly palace of the solitary destructive heaven. The heavenly savage celestial emperor, Meng Luo. He was one of Meng Luo's admirers. Previously, he had rushed to the heavenly palace of the solitary destructive heaven after hearing that Meng Luo was personally taking charge of the recruitment. At this moment, the other elder on duty in front of the mountain gate also discovered that something was amiss. What's going on? This guy, why is he frozen in the void? In just a blink of an eye, A figure with a majestic aura shot out of the mountain gate like a cannonball and appeared outside the mountain gate in just a blink of an eye. When the elder on duty saw this person, his eyes lit up immediately. Then he hurriedly bowed respectfully at the newcomer. "Greetings, Lord Meng Luo." The newcomer was none other than Meng Luo. Meng Luo stood outside the mountain gate and looked at the young man who was sitting cross-legged in the distance. In the beginning he only frowned slightly. However, his expression soon turned solemn. The young man's surroundings seemed to have turned into a forbidden zone. His divine consciousness could not get close to the young man at all. "Sir, who are you? Why have you come to the heavenly palace of the solitary destructive heaven?" Meng Luo asked politely. Although he did not know if the young man was using the formation disc or if the young man was using the formation, he still asked politely. At the same time, the young man raised his hand and tossed the elder on duty in the heavenly palace of the solitary destructive heaven to Meng Luo like a piece of trash. When the elder on duty discovered he could control his celestial origin energy, he hastily bowed at Meng Luo and said, "Lord Meng Luo, I'm sorry for troubling you." Meng Luo nodded slightly at the elder. "You may leave for now." After the person in front of him left, Meng Luo once again looked at the golden figure not far away. He felt slightly uneasy. At the same time, he could not help but feel a sense of bitterness in his heart. Initially, he thought he was quite strong and that there were not many people who were stronger than him in the heavenly palace of the solitary destructive heaven. However, he did not expect a powerhouse whom even the heavenly emperor whom he respected the most could not do anything to would appear. Then, the young master of the heavenly palace of the solitary destructive heaven showed up and displayed strength that was even stronger than the heavenly emperor. After all, the young master of the solitary destructive heaven was not as strong as him in the past. In less than 100 years, the young master of the solitary destructive heaven had grown so strong that he could kill him with just a sneeze. Now that the golden-clad young man had appeared out of nowhere, not only was he unable to see through the young man, but he also felt an inexplicable pressure. He was certain the young man was not pressuring him. However, he still felt an inexplicable pressure when facing the young man. He did not know if it was just his mind playing tricks on him. "I mean you no harm." The golden-clad young man remained seated with his legs crossed. His expression remained unchanged as he looked at Meng Luo indifferently and said lazily, "I'm here to wait for someone. That person will leave when he arrives." The young man replied. "Are you waiting for someone from the heavenly palace of the solitary destructive heaven?" Meng Luo asked. He thought the young man was here to look for the heavenly emperor of the solitary destructive heaven. He was already wondering how he should answer if the young man asked about the heavenly emperor's whereabouts. "I don't know." The golden-clad young man shook his head. A slight frown appeared on Meng Luo's face when the young man spoke again. "His name is Duan Lingtian. Do you know him?" Duan Lingtian. Meng Luo was stunned when he heard the young man's words. Then he sighed in relief. A smile appeared on his face as he said, "So you're a friend of the young master of the solitary destructive heaven. Did you arrange to meet the young master of the solitary destructive heaven here?" It was as though Meng Luo had changed into a different person. He was much friendlier now. Upon seeing this, the elder from the heavenly palace who worshipped Meng Luo was shocked. He did not expect the usually cold heavenly savage celestial emperor to have such a side to him. "Duan Lingtian is the young master of the solitary destructive heaven?" The golden-clad young man was slightly taken aback when he heard this. He rose to his feet and shook his head as he said, "That brat didn't tell me this. If I knew he's the young master of the solitary destructive heaven, I would have gone in and asked for a cup of tea instead of waiting here. However, no matter how slow he is, he should have arrived by now." As soon as the golden-clad young man finished speaking, swoosh, a figure appeared in the distance with just a few teleportations. "He's here." The golden-clad young man smiled faintly as he looked in the direction of the figure. In just a blink of an eye, Duan Lingtian appeared outside the heavenly palace of the solitary destructive heaven as well. "Greetings, young master of the solitary destructive heaven." Meng Luo bowed respectfully when he saw Duan Lingtian. Even the two elders from the heavenly palace who were on duty at the entrance of the solitary destructive heaven quickly followed suit and bowed as well. "Greetings, young master of the solitary destructive heaven. Senior Meng Luo, you're here as well?" Duan Lingtian was slightly surprised to see Meng Luo. "I heard there's a guest, so I came out to welcome him," Meng Luo said awkwardly as he looked at the golden-clad young man. Earlier he had come in a hurry. If he did not know the golden-clad young man was not to be trifled with, he would have attacked him. At this moment, Duan Lingtian looked at the golden-clad young man and smiled apologetically. Elder Yi, I appeared in a mundane realm. After I arrived in the Devata realm, I arrived at a small place that's quite far from the transportation formation. I'm sorry to have kept you waiting. Meng Luo was confused by Duan Lingtian's polite words. It seemed like the golden-clad young man was even more extraordinary than the young master of the solitary destructive heaven. After all, the young master of the solitary destructive heaven was a divine emperor. Who was this golden-clad young man whom he addressed as Elder Yi? It's all right, I've only waited for a short while. The golden-clad young man was none other than Yi Qinfeng, a void-pierced stage elder from the Pure Sun sect who had returned with Duan Lingtian from the Mystic Star Land. He smiled indifferently as he said, however, you didn't tell me you're the young master of the heavenly palace of the solitary destructive heaven. As the host, shouldn't you brew a pot of tea for a guest who has come from afar? Yi Qinfeng said with a smile. Chapter 3960. Meng Luo was stunned when he entered the heavenly palace of the solitary destructive heaven with the two figures in front of him. His heart was filled with shock and awe. Earlier, his young hall master had introduced him to the golden-robed young man, and he had also introduced the golden-robed young man to him. The golden-clad young man was a void-pierced stage elder from the Chunyang school. He had no idea who the golden-clad young man was. However, he instinctively assumed the golden-clad young man was from a hidden force in a Devata realm. Moreover, he was certain the golden-clad young man had a high status. However, when his young palace master, Duan Lingtian, told him through voice transmission what kind of force the Pure Sun sect was and what the other party's cultivation base was, he was shocked. The Chunyang school was a god-emperor force in a realm of gods with many god-emperors. Moreover, the golden-clad young man was a god-emperor? Although Meng Luo had never been to a realm of gods, he had heard about the god-emperors from his heavenly emperor, Feng Qingyang. Even in a realm of gods, god-emperors were considered top-notch powerhouses. Naturally, celestial emperors from the natives of the realms of gods would have their strength restricted in the lower realms of the realms of gods. For example, the person who had hunted his heavenly emperor down in the realm of gods had said that he could kill his heavenly emperor with just a breath if his strength was not restricted. However, even if his strength was restricted, his heavenly emperor was still no match for him. In the end, his heavenly emperor was forced to enter the Azura Hell, one of the 7 deadliest places in a Devata realm. Initially, Meng Luo had thought his heavenly emperor was doomed. He did not expect his heavenly emperor would return in the end. However, it did not affect his understanding of how terrifying the experts in the realm of gods were. If their strength was restricted, how terrifying would they be if their strength was not restricted? According to the young palace master, this Elder Yi isn't a native of the realms of gods. In other words, his strength as a god-emperor won't be restricted when he leaves the realms of gods, Duan Lingtian said. This is an existence much stronger than the young palace master. Right now, Meng Luo was completely frightened by Yi Qinfeng's strength, and was somewhat distracted. Duan Lingtian brought Yi Qinfeng to the place where he used to cultivate in the heavenly palace of the solitary destructive heaven. When the heavenly palace of the solitary destructive heaven was in ruins and had to be rebuilt, Hualao had personally overseen the restoration of the place. Young palace master. Duan Lingtian and Hualao chatted in the courtyard while Meng Luo stood guard outside. Not long after, Hualao appeared, wearing a fiery red robe. Hualao, of course, it was Meng Luo who greeted him. As for the others, he didn't call them over. Even if the higher-ups of the Heavenly Emperor Palace noticed Duan Lingtian's return, they were dismissed by him. He didn't want them to disturb the young palace master and the divine emperor. Hualao. Duan Lingtian rose to his feet when he saw Hualao. With a smile on his face, he introduced Hualao to Yi Qinfeng. Duan Lingtian had always treated Hualao as a senior. Even if Yi Qinfeng addressed himself as a servant, Duan Lingtian had never treated him as such. Back in the mundane realm, Hualao and the 7 Treasures Jewel Pagoda had saved his life countless times. Duan Lingtian had survived countless dangers with the help of the 7 Treasures Jewel Pagoda and Hualao. Hualao, Senior Meng Luo, please carry on with your work. Elder Yi and I will stay here for a while before we leave. Duan Lingtian said to Elder Hua and Meng Luo. Also, the reason Elder Yi followed me here is to enter the netherworld and rescue Master. I'm sure it won't be long before you can see Master again. Upon seeing Meng Luo, Duan Lingtian was relieved to know that his master, Feng Qingyang, was still alive. It was fine as long as he was alive. His mere clone might not be able to do anything to Mi Xian. However, Yi Qinfeng, who had followed him back from the profound Handle land, was his original body and a god emperor. How strong was a god emperor's soul power? At least, Duan Lingtian knew that his original body's soul power was not even 1/100th of Yi Qinfeng's soul power. The safety of Feng Qingyang, the Lord Heavenly Emperor, was undoubtedly a worry for Meng Luo and Hua Lao. When they found out that Yi Qinfeng was a god emperor, they wondered if he was a helper that their young palace master had found to go to the netherworld to rescue their Lord Heavenly Emperor. Now that their young palace master had confirmed it, they were overjoyed. Before leaving, they all bowed and expressed their gratitude to Yi Qinfeng. After the two left, Yi Qinfeng looked at Duan Lingtian and said with a smile, "The two of them are loyal to your master." Duan Lingtian nodded. Senior Meng Luo has been with master since a long time ago. He's a loyal follower. As for Elder Hua, although he hasn't been with master for a long time, it was master who gave him a new life. Therefore he also sees master as his savior. He feels that serving master is the same as repaying the favor. Duan Lingtian said. Both are rare. Yi Qinfeng nodded. When do we leave? Anytime. Duan Lingtian said, however, I'm not familiar with the netherworld and don't know how to get there. I have to do some homework first. You don't have to do any homework. Yi Qinfeng smiled. I've been to the netherworld once before I became a god. I know how to get there. Now, what you have to do is to see if you can find out where your master is in the netherworld. Or rather, how to find that dead spirit clansman in the netherworld. The netherworld is not small. Going there to find someone is like looking for a needle in a haystack. Yi Qinfeng shook his head as he spoke. Duan Lingtian frowned slightly. Then we can only try and see if we can find any clues about where he is in the netherworld. At this moment, Duan Lingtian suddenly regretted killing Wu Hongqing, the palace master of the main hall of the Tidal Temple. Since Wu Hongqing was able to ask Mi Xian to deal with his master after his master, Feng Qingyang, returned, it meant that Wu Hongqing might know where Mi Xian was in the netherworld. Of course, it was also possible that Wu Hongqing didn't know and was only communicating through soul orbs. Elder Yi, please stay here for a while. I'll go and ask around. After bidding farewell to Yi Qinfeng, Duan Lingtian left the heavenly palace of the solitary destructive heaven. Then he teleported to the Tidal Temple's branch in the solitary destructive heaven through a nearby transportation formation. The current hall master of the solitary destructive heavens branch was a new hall master. Moreover, he was a close confidant of Zhuang Tianheng, the current hall master of the Tidal Temple. Zhuang Tianheng had appointed Duan Lingtian as the hall master of the solitary destructive heavens branch because he was worried that someone would offend Duan Lingtian. Therefore, Zhuang Tianheng could order his close confidants to treat Duan Lingtian with respect. After all, Zhuang Tianheng had the support of Duan Lingtian. Moreover, Duan Lingtian had killed Wu Hongqing and made Zhuang Tianheng the hall master of the main temple. Young master. At this time, Duan Lingtian was led by the hall master of the solitary destructive heavens branch of the Tidal Temple to the Tidal Temple's main temple through a transportation formation. Zhuang Tianheng had long since familiarized himself with his new identity. His attitude was much more dignified than before. However, when he saw Duan Lingtian, he bowed humbly and asked, "My lord, is there anything I can help you with?" Duan Lingtian did not beat around the bush as he asked, "Is there anyone in the Tidal Temple who was close to Wu Hongqing in the past?" Although Zhuang Tianheng did not know why Duan Lingtian asked such a question, he smiled wryly and said, "That's all? Those who were close to Wu Hongqing were all killed by you, lord? I've also killed the rest." "My lord, do you need them for something?" Zhuang Tianheng asked. "I don't really need them." Although Duan Lingtian was slightly disappointed, he did not show it on his face. After obtaining a large number of cultivation resources from Zhuang Tianheng, he decided to leave. Previously, before he parted ways with Zhuang Tianheng, he had instructed Zhuang Tianheng to continue collecting cultivation resources that were useful to his family. After so many years, he had accumulated quite a number of cultivation resources. If there's anything you need, don't hesitate to contact Elder Hua of the Heavenly Palace of the Solitary Destructive Heaven. I've already exchanged soul pearls with both of you. If there's anything I can do for you, I can help you, Duan Lingtian said to Zhuang Tianheng before he left. Although Duan Lingtian knew Zhuang Tianheng would not dare to disobey him, he felt it was better to give Zhuang Tianheng some benefits if he wanted Zhuang Tianheng to work for him. "Yes, my lord." As expected, when Zhuang Tianheng heard Duan Lingtian's words, he nodded respectfully with a smile on his face. Then he watched as Duan Lingtian left. Safe journey, my lord. After leaving the tidal temple, Duanling Tian returned to the heavenly palace of the solitary destructive heaven. After meeting up with Yi Qinfeng, he said, Elder Yi, I'm afraid we've run out of leads. However, I have an idea that might work. Duanling Tian said to Yi Qinfeng. What is it? Yi Qinfeng asked curiously, luring the snake out of its hole. Duanling Tian's eyes flashed with a bright light as he said bluntly, Next I'll have to trouble Elder Yi to bring me to the netherworld. I want to send a message there. All right. At this moment Yi Qinfeng knew he could only rely on Duanling Tian to capture the Nether Spirit clansmen. If he relied on himself, he would be able to find the Nether Spirit clansmen after spending some time. However, the process of finding the Nether Spirit clansmen was like searching for a needle in a haystack to him. If he had a choice, he would not want to search for the dead Spirit clansmen in the Netherworld. Moreover, who knew if the Nether Spirit clansmen would kill Duanling Tian's master while he was searching for Duanling Tian's master? Then, he would switch to another body and continue to live on. If the dead Spirit clansman concealed his identity, it would be a waste of time. Chapter 3961. The Netherworld also existed in an independent dimension. The way to go there was similar to going to the Azura Hell. Back then it was Duanling Tian's master, Feng Qingyang, who had brought him to the Azura Hell. Today it was Yi Qinfeng who had brought him to the Netherworld. After entering the Netherworld, Duanling Tian finally understood why it was said that the Netherworld was not that dangerous. The moment they entered the Netherworld it was peaceful, no different from the outside world. Although they could occasionally see some spiritual life forms, these spiritual life forms were obviously very timid. When they saw Duanling Tian and Yi Qinfeng from afar, they all avoided them. I didn't expect the Netherworld to be so peaceful. Duanling Tian sighed. The periphery is like this. Yi Qinfeng smiled. When you enter the Netherworld you will be in the periphery. Moreover, at different times after entering the Netherworld, you will appear in different places in the periphery. Unless you enter at the same time like you and me. Back then, before Yi Qinfeng had become a god, he had entered the Netherworld to capture spiritual life forms that could serve as the weapon spirits of high-grade divine weapons for his family. After so many years coming here again he was rather emotional. Yes. Duanling Tian nodded. At the same time he finished what he had to do next in a short time. After that, Duanling Tian said to Yi Qinfeng, Senior, I'm not sure if my plan will work. I feel that we can wander around the Netherworld for a while and gather some information. Yes. Yi Qinfeng had no objections. Although he was looking forward to this trip, he knew there was no such thing as absolute certainty. Even if Duanling Tian could bring him to the Nether Spirit Clan's clansmen, who knew if the Nether Spirit Clan's clansmen would be killed first? Nothing was absolute. Therefore, although he was looking forward to it, he still maintained a calm heart. For the rest of the trip, Duanling Tian began to ask around for the old site of the Dead Spirit Clan. After a few days he successfully found the old site of the Dead Spirit Clan. The former encampment of the Dead Spirit Clan had long been reduced to ruins. Not even a blade of grass grew. Furthermore, as a race of spiritual life forms, there were no exquisite buildings to begin with. Even if they were standing on top of the ruins, they could imagine that even if they weren't in ruins they wouldn't be much better. Duanling Tian, I have an idea. Yi Qinfeng suddenly said. Duanling Tian looked at Yi Qinfeng in confusion. I feel that instead of searching for clues here, why don't we find the powerful races nearby and ask them if they have any clues about the Dead Spirit race clansmen? The birth of a godly emperor realm Dead Spirit clansman. As long as he doesn't intend to hide from the world, the other clans will have some news about him. Yi Qinfeng expressed his thoughts. Duanling Tian's eyes immediately lit up at Yi Qinfeng's thought. At the same time he smiled bitterly. I forgot. With Elder Yi, a god emperor powerhouse, there's no need to worry about those clans in the Netherworld not giving you face. A god emperor expert and a medium god emperor at that. Most importantly, he had come in person. Even if such an existence was not considered the strongest in the Netherworld, it would definitely be considered as one of the more top-notch powerhouses. Not to mention others, just the Dead Spirit race. In the past, if Yi Qinfeng had come to the Dead Spirit race, he could have easily wiped them out by himself. Even those clans whose strongest experts were only godly emperors would find it difficult to stop Yi Qinfeng. You've been thinking of your own methods. It's normal that you've neglected me. Yi Qinfeng smiled slightly. Anyway, your method of luring the snake out of its hole is scheduled for many days later. During this time let's try my method. Who knows, we might be able to find that person. Unless that person can keep his composure, he'll definitely leave behind some clues. In an ordinary place in the netherworld, the appearance of a godly emperor is no small matter. Yi Qinfeng actually knew more about the netherworld than Duan Lingtian. Hearing Yi Qinfeng's words, Duan Lingtian naturally had no objections. Then we'll follow Elder Ye's method first. If we really can't find that Mi Xian, we'll go out and wait for him to walk right into our trap. The Silver Horn clan was one of the few clans in the netherworld that did not have souls. Moreover, this clan was not much different from humans. However, they were more like the primitive people on Earth. They were between apes and humans and looked somewhat uncivilized. In fact, their intelligence was no different from that of humans. In fact, because they spent most of their time in the netherworld and lived in the environment of the netherworld, their souls were stronger than those of humans of the same cultivation level. Most importantly, there was a special feature. This race also had a very obvious characteristic. They all had a single silver horn on their heads. The horn was extremely sharp and could be considered one of their weapons. If it was tempered to a high-grade immortal artifact, it was even stronger. This is the Silver Horn clan. It's said that they're a close relative of humans. They're the offspring of humans and immortal beasts. At this moment, Yi Qinfeng brought Duan Lingtian to the place where the Silver Horn clan resided. Within a huge valley among the lofty mountains and precipitous ridges, Yi Qinfeng stood in the air and looked down at everything as he spoke to Duan Lingtian. The Silver Horn clan is scattered all over the netherworld. Most of them are branches. This Silver Horn clan should only be a branch. The strongest one is only a mid-level divine emperor. Yi Qinfeng said. At this moment, although Duan Lingtian and Yi Qinfeng were standing openly here, the Silver Horn clan members who were passing by did not seem to see them at all. This was, of course, Yi Qinfeng's method. Let's go. Let's go meet the strongest person of this branch of the Silver Horn clan. After calling out to Duan Lingtian, Yi Qinfeng led him out of the Silver Horn clan. In the blink of an eye, they had arrived at the depths of the Silver Horn clan's residence and entered a building that looked like a temple. Whoosh! Duan Lingtian's eyes flashed. In the next moment he realized that Yi Qinfeng had brought him into a huge room. Although the room was huge, the furnishings inside were very simple. There was a table, a chair, and a bed. At this moment, a very old Silver Horn clan member was sitting on the bed. This Silver Horn clan member was very different from the Silver Horn clan members outside. He was more like a human. Moreover, there was only a little silver horn left on his forehead. It seemed like it would disappear completely at any time. In the Silver Horn clan, the stronger the existence, the more they'll be like a human. When they reach the Emperor God realm, the silver horn on their forehead will disappear completely. At the same time, they'll look no different from a human. Yi Qinfeng said to Duan Lingtian in a timely manner. Duan Lingtian nodded his head. All right, now that we've revealed ourselves, he should be awake by now. As soon as Yi Qinfeng finished his sentence, the concealment technique that was covering him and Duan Lingtian was instantly removed. Both of them were completely exposed. As soon as they were exposed, the Silver Horn clansman on the bed sensed their auras. Horror dawned on him as soon as he opened his eyes. When he saw Duan Lingtian and Yu Luo, his divine energy surged out of his body. In the next moment he was extremely agitated. It was as though he was about to attack. However, as Yi Qinfeng snorted coldly, a strong invisible energy swept out. In the blink of an eye, it crushed the divine energy on the Silver Horn clan member and suppressed his divine energy completely. In the next moment, the Silver Horn clan member's expression changed drastically. His eyes were filled with fear. At the same time, an old and terrified voice came from the depths of his throat. Emperor. Emperor God expert. You're quite observant, Yi Qinfeng said indifferently. At the same time he withdrew his energy. It was as though he was no longer worried that the Silver Horn clan member before him would act rashly. As for the other party, he did not act rashly. To be precise, he did not dare to act rashly. The Silver Horn clan member took a deep breath. In the next moment he got off the bed and bowed respectfully to Yi Qinfeng. Greetings, Master Emperor God. Yi Qinfeng nodded lightly. I have no ill intentions towards you or your Silver Horn clan. I'm here mainly to ask for your help. I want to see if you can help me find someone. As soon as he finished speaking, Yi Qinfeng raised his hand. A pill bottle appeared in his hand. In the blink of an eye, the divine pill in the pill bottle whizzed out and floated in midair. It was a divine pill that was surrounded by purple lightning. It emitted an alluring pill fragrance. Meanwhile, Duan Lingtian recognized the divine pill with just a glance. It was a divine pill that would not increase his cultivation level if he were to consume it now. Moreover, the one in Yi Qinfeng's hand was an ultimate divine pill. It was an ultimate emperor-level divine pill. As for Qi Lu, when he saw the divine pill, his pupils shrank rapidly. Even his breathing became hurried. Ultimate Purple Lightning Divine Pill? Purple Lightning Divine Pill was a divine pill that could help divine emperors cultivate. The higher the quality, the better the effect. An Ultimate Purple Lightning Divine Pill was 10 times more effective than an ordinary Purple Lightning Divine Pill. Most importantly, no matter if it was an Ultimate Purple Lightning Divine Pill or an Ultimate Purple Lightning Divine Pill, after consuming 3 or more, it would no longer have any effect. At that time, one would develop a resistance to the medicinal effect. Part of the reason Duan Ling Tian's cultivation base was able to advance so quickly was because he had consumed 3 extreme-grade violet electricity divine pills. Yes, he had personally refined them himself. Find that person and this divine pill will be yours, Yi Qinfeng said. As soon as Yi Qinfeng said this, Qi Lu's eyes turned red. Master, who are you looking for? Not only can I find him myself, but I can also ask the Silverhorn clan for help. I can even ask the subordinate clans of the Silverhorn clan to help. Qi Lu was the high priest of the Silverhorn clan. He was also the strongest expert of this Silverhorn clan branch. Even the patriarch of the Silverhorn clan was only his disciple. Mi Xian of the Dead Spirit clan, Yi Qinfeng said. Mi Xian. Hearing Yi Qinfeng's words, Qi Lu's pupils shrank. Then a trace of disgust flashed in the depths of his eyes. Master, you're looking for Mi Xian? You and Mi Xian. Qi Lu looked at Yi Qinfeng with a somewhat doubtful gaze. Seems like you know him. Yi Qinfeng looked deeply at Qi Lu. Do you know where he is? Chapter 3962. I don't know him. Qi Lu shook his head and said, but I've heard of him. This person is very ruthless. He used to be the patriarch of the Dead Spirit clan. Like the previous patriarchs of the Dead Spirit clan, he kept a low profile until he left the Netherworld. He became a completely different person. After he was chased out of the Dead Spirit race, he returned to the clan a few times and devoured all the clansmen of the Dead Spirit race. During this period, the elders of the Dead Spirit race once went to invite the God Emperors who were on good terms with the ancestor of the Dead Spirit race. But when the God Emperors arrived, he ran away. Later, he entered the God Emperor realm and killed the God Emperors that the Dead Spirit clan had invited to deal with him. He even wiped out that clan. In our region, he has become a celebrity. It is said that he has now become a middle God Emperor. When Qi Lu mentioned Mi Xian, there was a hint of fear in his tone. Even though he was also a middle God Emperor, he was still wary of the ruthless who rose quickly. If possible, he really did not want to provoke such an existence. Do you know where he is now? Yi Qinfeng asked bluntly. I do. While Duan Ling Tian and Yi Qinfeng were staring at Qi Lu nodded. After Mi Xian entered the Middle God Emperor realm, he occupied a piece of land and became the king of it. He gathered many non-soul life forms like us from the Netherworld and created a force called the Xianling Alliance. He even recruited a group of subordinates. His subordinates are also people who have committed all kinds of crimes in our area. They all go to him to seek his protection, medium-level divine emperors. In our area, high-level divine emperors and above don't come out. They can be considered as overlords. Qi Lu said. Duan Ling Tian's eyes lit up when he heard Qi Lu's words. He did not expect to find Mi Xian's whereabouts so easily. To think that he had come up with a plan to lure the snake out of its hole out of worry. Now, it seemed that it would not be necessary. Yi Qinfeng's eyes flickered as he looked at Yi Lu and asked again, where is the Xianling Alliance? Do you know? I'm not too sure. However, my disciple, the current clan chief of the Silverhorn clan, should know about it. As soon as Qi Lu finished speaking, he added, I just sent a message to ask him. He knows. My lord, why are you looking for Mi Xian? Qi Lu asked. He didn't know if the person in front of him was Mi Xian's friend or foe. Even though it seemed more likely that the person in front of him was an enemy, Qi Lu still felt some fear in his heart. What? Are you afraid that he'll take revenge on you? This time, Duan Ling Tian looked at Qi Lu as if he could see through Qi Lu's thoughts at a glance. Qi Lu smiled awkwardly. Although I'm not afraid of him, I'm inferior to someone who doesn't have a bottom line in all aspects. Who knows if he'll break through and become a higher God Emperor if given some more time. Duan Ling Tian smiled. If you're worried that he'll take revenge on you, there's no need for that. As long as he's targeted by us, he'll definitely die. This time, as long as the Silverhorn clan helps us find him, I'll give the Silverhorn clan 10 Ultimate Spiritualism Divine Pills. The Ultimate Spiritualism Divine Pill was an Ultimate King Grade Divine Pill. It was also a divine pill that assisted God Emperors in their cultivation. Although in terms of value, it was inferior to the Extreme Purple Electricity Divine Pill, which was an Extreme Emperor Grade Divine Pill, the 10 of them added together were still more valuable than the Extreme Purple Electricity Divine Pill. Moreover, the Ultimate Spiritualism Divine Pill's medicinal properties were relatively mild. Basically, one would only develop resistance after taking 5 pills. In this aspect, it was still stronger than the Ultimate Purple Electricity Divine Pill. Hearing Duan Lingtian's words, Yi Chenfeng glanced at Duan Lingtian. He had long heard that Duan Lingtian could refine Ultimate King Grade Divine Pills. Now it seemed that the rumor was true. A lower God Emperor who can kill ordinary God Emperors, less than 3,000 years old, and can refine Ultimate King Grade Divine Pills. Even those powerful hierarch forces might not have such a monstrous genius, right? If someone as young as Duan Lingtian had such a force, Yi Chenfeng would believe that some hierarch forces would have such a force. However, on this basis, coupled with the fact that he could refine Ultimate King Grade Divine Pills, Yi Chenfeng felt that it was unlikely that any hierarch forces in the current era would have such an existence. Many thanks, my lord. Qi Lu's eyes lit up when he heard Duan Lingtian's words. Don't worry, my lord. I've already asked my disciple to come over. Once he's here, he and I will personally bring both of you to Mi Xian. As the saying went, money makes the world go round. In front of 10 Ultimate King Grade Divine Pills and 1 Ultimate Emperor Grade Divine Pill, Qi Lu completely dispelled any thoughts of hesitation and fear. Moreover, this lord who was traveling with a God Emperor expert had said that as long as they found Mi Xian would undoubtedly die. If it was just a God Emperor or even a high-level God Emperor, Qi Lu wouldn't dare to be 100% certain that they could kill Mi Xian. Mi Xian was too cunning. Even if a high-level God Emperor was stronger than him, they might not be able to kill him. However, the person in front of him was different. A God Emperor expert wanted to kill Mi Xian. So what if Mi Xian was cunning? With a single thought, Mi Xian would be suppressed. He had once been to the main clan of the Silverhorn clan and witnessed the methods of the God Emperors of the Silverhorn clan. That was only a lower God Emperor, but he could kill a few high God Emperors like killing dogs. The other party didn't even have a chance to escape. Teacher. Soon, the patriarch of the Silverhorn clan arrived. He was a sturdy single-horned ape-man. The single horn on his head seemed to be retracting, and his eyes were bright and full of spirit. This is Lord God Emperor. With Qi Lu's introduction, the patriarch of the Silverhorn clan immediately bowed humbly at Yi Chenfeng. He did not even dare to look at Duan Lingtian as he bowed respectfully and called out, Lord. Now bring us to Profound Spirit Alliance and find that Mi Xian. Qi Lu looked at his disciple and said indifferently, Yes, teacher. Sirs, please come with me, Li Mu said. As the patriarch's voice fell, he led the way. Duan Lingtian and the other two immediately followed. With his disciple leading the way, Qi Lu naturally didn't dare to walk in front. He respectfully followed behind Duan Lingtian and Duan Lingtian. During this process he was also observing Duan Lingtian. A person with a God Emperor expert was definitely not an ordinary person. Soon, he discovered that the other party was indeed extraordinary. Although he wasn't a God Emperor expert, he was still a God Emperor. Although he was only a lower God Emperor, he still gave him a sense of danger. Profound Spirit Alliance was located within a Blood Mountain range. Looking from afar, it gave off a sinister and strange feeling when contrasted with the gloomy sky of the Netherworld. Lords, this is the encampment of Profound Spirit Alliance. If we continue to go deeper, we might be discovered. That Mi Xian recruited an extremely famous array master in our area. Anyone below the God Emperor level who intrudes into his array will be discovered by him immediately. Mi Xian values him greatly and appointed him as the only Vice Alliance Master of Profound Spirit Alliance. His position is only below one person and above all others. Of course, Profound Spirit Alliance doesn't have that many people, at most a few hundred. The patriarch of the Silverhorn clan stood outside the Blood Mountain range and respectfully said to Duan Lingtian and Yi Chenfeng. Hearing this, Duan Lingtian looked at Yi Chenfeng. As for Yi Chenfeng, he had already extended his powerful consciousness the moment the other party finished speaking. In the blink of an eye, he had locked onto the entire Blood Mountain in front of him. Then, a faint smile appeared at the corner of his mouth. Elder Yi, you found it? Duan Lingtian's eyes lit up. A high god king's body with 2 souls. Should be correct. Yi Qinfeng smiled. Duan Lingtian's face was immediately filled with joy, but after a while he became somewhat worried. Elder Yi, I haven't asked you how you plan to deal with that Mi Xian. If possible, I hope you won't harm my master's body and soul. This was also Duan Lingtian's only concern. You don't need to worry about this. Yi Qinfeng was clearly in a very good mood. If I, Yi Qinfeng, failed to deal with the soul of a mere middle god emperor, then I would have lived for almost 20,000 years in vain. The moment Yi Qinfeng's words left his mouth, Duan Lingtian heaved a sigh of relief in his heart. At the same time he could not help but feel shocked. This elder Yi was less than 20,000 years old? Even in the Tianlong clan, it was difficult to find a golden dragon elder younger than 40,000 years old. Although he knew Yi Qinfeng was young, he didn't expect him to be this young. At this moment, Duan Lingtian was not the only one who was shocked. Even the 2 men from the Silverhorn clan were dumbfounded. This god emperor expert was less than 20,000 years old? One had to know that even the younger disciple, a lower-level divine emperor, was almost 30,000 years old. A god emperor expert less than 20,000 years old? Who is he? At this moment, the master and disciple of the Silverhorn clan saw the sincere shock in each other's eyes. At least in the netherworld, they had never heard of a god emperor expert less than 20,000 years old. Whoosh! Yi Qinfeng raised his hand and a divine pill appeared. In the blink of an eye, it floated in front of the Silverhorn clan's high priest, allowing him to take it. Seeing this, Duan Lingtian also took out a bottle of pills and threw it to Qi Lu. After receiving the divine pill and the bottle, Qi Lu was overjoyed. He thanked Duan Lingtian and Duan Lingtian profusely. Thank you so much, thank you so much. However, when he bowed and stood up, he found that the 2 people in front of him had already disappeared. This time I've earned a lot. Qi Lu grinned and took out 5 divine pills from the bottle. Together with the ultimate purple electricity divine pill, he threw them all to the disciple who had been staring at the divine pill in his hand for a long time. Out of the 10 ultimate spirit electricity divine pills, I'll give you 5. No matter how many I give you, it's useless. This ultimate purple electricity divine pill is also for you. The disciple shook his head hurriedly. Master, I can't take this ultimate purple electricity divine pill. With it, you'll definitely be able to pass the next heavenly tribulation smoothly. Take it as you're told. I know my situation best. Even if I take this ultimate purple electricity divine pill, I'll only live for 1 or 2,000 years at most. Chapter 3963. Little Tian? Although Feng Qingyang's soul was suppressed, he was not in any danger for the time being. However, he was slightly taken aback when he received a message from his disciple, Duan Lingtian. Master, I'll wait for you and Mi Xian at the entrance of the Azura Hell with a god emperor in a month. Just tell him that there's something good in the Azura Hell and lure him here. As long as you are here, the god emperors beside me will take action and directly extract Mi Xian's soul from your body. These were the exact words of his disciple, Duan Lingtian. His first reaction was that his disciple, Duan Lingtian, had gone to the netherworld to save him after he had not returned to the heavenly palace of the solitary destructive heaven for a long time. Initially, Duan Lingtian did not approve of Duan Lingtian's decision. However, there was nothing he could do now. He could receive Duan Lingtian's message, but he could not send a message to Duan Lingtian since Duan Lingtian's soul pearl was still in his spatial ring. Now that Mi Xian had taken over his body, Mi Xian would react if he used his spatial ring. A god emperor? Although Duan Lingtian did not know where his disciple, Duan Lingtian, had found a god emperor, he did not doubt his disciple's words. He knew Duan Lingtian would not lie to him. In the next few days, Feng Qingyang intentionally showed signs of loosening his stance and began to negotiate with Mi Xian. For example, Mi Xian had to leave his body before the Azura Hell. Duan Lingtian would share his fortuitous encounter in the Azura Hell with Mi Xian. Naturally, Mi Xian would not agree to this. However, when Mi Xian saw that Feng Qingyang had begun to negotiate terms with him, he saw a glimmer of hope even though Feng Qingyang's conditions were unacceptable. He wanted to replicate Feng Qingyang's fortuitous encounter in the Azura Hell and seize the opportunity to obtain it. In the blink of an eye, many days passed. Feng Qingyang, who had been negotiating with Mi Xian every few days, also made concessions time and time again. Mi Xian, I'll take you to Azura Hell, but you have to leave my body before we reach our destination. Otherwise, I won't deactivate the spell formation for you. If you don't agree, then we don't need to talk anymore. Mi Xian had been very concerned when he first heard Feng Qingyang say that, but now he didn't care at all. That was because Feng Qingyang would say the same thing every time they talked about conditions recently. He was tired of hearing it. Feng Qingyang, why don't you state some more realistic conditions? Mi Xian said indifferently. What a joke. If he left Feng Qingyang's body at that time, he didn't know what would happen to Feng Qingyang. After all, Feng Qingyang was most familiar with that place, but he wasn't. Master. On this day, Feng Qingyang, who had just rested for a day and hadn't discussed conditions with Mi Xian, received a message from his disciple, Duanling Tian. Feng Qingyang was a little confused. Little Tian, didn't he say he'd take that god emperor to the gates of Azura Hell to wait for us? He even asked me to meet half a month later. Why is he here again? For him to be able to send a message meant that his disciple, Duanling Tian, was also in the netherworld. When he thought of the message his disciple, Duanling Tian, had sent him half a month ago, he didn't understand. During this time he had been planning to negotiate with Mi Xian for another half a month before compromising and taking Mi Xian to Azura Hell. He hadn't expected his disciple, Duanling Tian, to come in before the time was up. But this time Duanling Tian quickly gave him an answer. Master, Elder Yi and I have already found our way here. Elder Ye's consciousness has already locked onto Mi Xian. We'll be there soon. But before that, you must be careful. Don't give Mi Xian an opportunity to destroy your body or hurt your soul. In the end, Duanling Tian's message became solemn and serious. Elder Yi? That God Emperor expert? Feng Qingyang's heart trembled. He'd never imagined that his disciple, Duanling Tian, would come to him with that God Emperor and lock onto Mi Xian. Be careful of Mi Xian's counterattack. Feng Qingyang became vigilant. He didn't dare to relax because he didn't know when his disciple, Duanling Tian and Yi Qinfeng would arrive. Almost as soon as Feng Qingyang thought this, a thunderous voice came from outside. It seemed to shake the heavens and the earth, causing the sand and dust in a large area of the Blood Mountain to move rhythmically. In some places there was even a small sandstorm. Mi Xian, get out here. Feng Qingyang recognized the voice as belonging to his disciple, Duanling Tian. If he could recognize it, so could Mi Xian. Mi Xian opened his eyes, his gaze cold. A cold smile appeared on his lips. Feng Qingyang, it seems that you and your disciple are truly master and disciple. He actually found the netherworld for you and even came to find me. Does he really think that I and my Shenling alliance can't do anything to him? Before Feng Qingyang could respond, Mi Xian's figure flashed, leaving the belly of a blood mountain and soaring into the sky. Lord Alliance Lord. Lord Alliance Lord. When Mi Xian's subordinates heard Duanling Tian's arrogant words, they flew toward Duanling Tian angrily. When Mi Xian arrived, he saw a familiar purple figure in the distance surrounded by a group of his subordinates, who were eyeing him like a tiger watching its prey. Duanling Tian. Mi Xian walked to the front of the crowd and looked at Duanling Tian mockingly as he said, "You couldn't do anything to me when we were in the heavenly palace of the solitary destructive heaven. Could it be that you, a low-level godly emperor, can do anything to me?" As he said this, the mocking smile on Mi Xian's face instantly turned into a mocking smile. Mi Xian, you can try and see if I can do anything to you. Duanling Tian had a brilliant smile on his face. Alliance Lord, leave him to me. An old man appeared behind Mi Xian in the blink of an eye. He stared coldly at Duanling Tian and said, "Today I'll take his head as the Alliance Lord." The old man was dressed in long gray robes. He was thin and had a cold expression on his face. He looked no different from a human. As soon as he finished speaking, divine power radiated from his body. Then, different formation discs were suspended in the void around him by divine power. This old man was none other than the only Vice Alliance Lord of the Profound Spirit Alliance. He was also Mi Xian's right-hand man. A formation grandmaster with the cultivation base of a lower divine emperor. Don't underestimate him, Tai Yuan. Mi Xian's eyes flashed. He's not simple. Let's work together and kill him. Use your formation to help me kill him. As soon as he finished speaking, Mi Xian's divine energy surged out of his body. Even though he hadn't fully occupied Feng Qingyang's body, he was familiar with it. His divine energy whizzed out of his body like an extension of his arm. Moreover, as his soul energy vibrated, soul attacks began to form one after another before he charged toward Duanling Tian. Yes, Alliance Lord. Although the old man felt that his alliance lord was being overly cautious, he did not hesitate. Almost as soon as Mi Xian moved, he charged toward Duan Tian. During this process, the formation discs around him flew out like a celestial maiden scattering flowers and scattered above Duan Tian's head. One formation after another was about to be set up. At this critical moment, something unexpected happened. Whoosh! Whoosh! It was as if a gust of wind had blown past. In the next moment, whether it was the old man himself or the spectators, they all clearly saw that the dozens of formation discs in the air had actually been swept away by a gust of wind and turned into dust that filled the air. "Who's there?" The old man cried out in alarm, his expression changing drastically. He knew his own formation discs very well. Even a high-level divine emperor might not be able to destroy all of his formation discs so easily without showing himself. These formation discs were all formation discs that he had nurtured with his soul energy for many years, and he had even infused them with his blood essence. They were far from ordinary formation discs. "Who's there?" The expressions of the other onlookers from the Shenling alliance also changed. At the same time, Mi Xian, who was attacking Duan Tian, quickly sensed the situation and his pupils constricted. "There's someone else." Duan Tian found a helper. Almost as soon as Mi Xian had this thought in mind, a voice rang out in his head. Whoosh! A faint golden figure appeared behind Mi Xian in the blink of an eye like a ghost. Moreover, Mi Xian did not seem to notice his appearance. Only Duan Tian and the others saw this person appear like a ghost. "Alliance Lord, be careful." The old man, Mi Xian's right-hand man in Shenling Alliance, the only vice-alliance lord of Shenling Alliance, Tai Yuan, instantly paled and cried out in alarm. Mi Xian froze. "What's going on? Is there danger? But why didn't I notice anything?" While Mi Xian was in a daze, the golden-robed young man who had appeared behind him finally made his move. With a lift of his hand, an invisible force swept out and entered Mi Xian's body through the top of his head. In the next instant, a faintly discernible illusory hand appeared. Under everyone's watchful eyes, it forcefully pulled a soul out of Mi Xian's body. To be precise, it was Feng Qingyang's soul. The eyes of that body dimmed for a moment, but in the next moment they regained their clarity. At the same time, the aura of that body greatly changed. "Master." Seeing this, Duan Tian was overjoyed. He immediately stepped forward and asked, "Are you okay?" "I'm fine." At this moment, Feng Qingyang finally regained his senses. He felt like he was dreaming. How did he manage to take back his body so easily? At the same time, his gaze fell on Mi Xian's soul. At this moment, Mi Xian's soul was being grabbed by the golden-robed youth's illusory hand. No matter how he struggled, he could not break free. Chapter 3964. "Oh, who are you?" In truth, Mi Xian was also in a state of shock. He never imagined that he would be pulled out of Feng Qingyang's body in the blink of an eye. As a soul, Mi Xian was still lively even after being pulled out. However, he soon discovered that he couldn't move at all in front of the golden-robed youth. His soul was completely suppressed, and his opponent's divine sense seemed to carry a frighteningly powerful pressure. Mi Xian stopped struggling. Duan Tian looked at Mi Xian and said indifferently, "Do you think you can escape in front of a God Emperor expert?" A God Emperor expert? When Duan Tian said this, not only did Mi Xian's soul tremble violently, but even Mi Xian's subordinates, including Tai Yuan, the vice-alliance leader of Shenling Alliance, were shocked. Their alliance leader had provoked the return of a God Emperor expert? Just a moment ago they were still wondering who could toy with their alliance leader, a middle God Emperor, in the palm of his hand. Now that they knew the other party was a God Emperor, they no longer had any doubts. A God Emperor expert naturally had the strength to do so. "My lord, what benefits did Duan Tian give you for you to help him deal with me?" Mi Xian's voice began to tremble when he looked at Yi Qinfeng again. "I, Mi Xian, am willing to pay a greater price as long as my lord is willing to spare my life." Now Mi Xian recognized the truth. The golden-robed youth in front of him was undoubtedly a God Emperor expert. Otherwise he wouldn't have been able to toy with him so easily. Duan Tian. However, almost as soon as Mi Xian finished speaking, Yi Qinfeng looked at Duan Tian. "Many thanks for your help, Elder Yi." As Duan Tian repeatedly thanked Yi Qinfeng, 2 rays of sword light shot out of his eyes. It was a soul attack that shot toward Mi Xian. Before finding Mi Xian, Duan Tian had mentioned his crime to Yi Qinfeng, hoping that he could kill Mi Xian with his own hands. As for Yi Qinfeng, he did not care who killed Mi Xian. It was because the moment Mi Xian died, it was enough time for him to collect Mi Xian's incomplete soul and use it as nourishment for his high-grade divine sword soul. No. As for Mi Xian, he could only watch as Duan Lingtian launched a soul attack at him. He wanted to defend himself, but he found that he couldn't use his soul power at all. At this moment he was suddenly enlightened. This Duan Lingtian was in a hurry to kill him because he wanted to silence him. At the same time he quickly came up with an answer in his mind. This Duan Lingtian must be worried that I'll expose the fact that he possesses 5 divine elements. My lord, in the blink of an eye Mi Xian reacted and looked at Yi Qinfeng. This Duan Lingtian has 5. In the end Mi Xian did not finish his words. As soon as the word, seed, left his mouth, Duan Lingtian's soul attack had already killed Yi Qinfeng before he even had the chance to react. Yi Qinfeng had only just reacted and had no time to think. When he saw that Mi Xian had been killed, he hurriedly took out a very special black bottle and raised his hand, collecting Mi Xian's soul that was on the verge of collapse. After collecting Mi Xian's soul, Yi Qinfeng shook the bottle and revealed a smile. Duan Lingtian, thank you. Yi Qinfeng repeatedly thanked Duan Lingtian. As for what Mi Xian wanted to say, he didn't care at all. In his opinion, even if Duan Lingtian had some treasure that Mi Xian was interested in, it wouldn't tempt him too much. Mi Xian was just a puny god emperor. Yi Qinfeng, on the other hand, was a middle god emperor. Moreover, Duan Lingtian had helped him greatly this time. It could be said that he was greatly indebted to him. Not to mention he did not know what his benefactor's belongings were. Even if he knew, he would not snatch them away. These were Yi Qinfeng's inner thoughts. Duan Lingtian naturally didn't know. Even if he did, he wouldn't regret his thunderous attack. After all, only a dead man's mouth was sealed. Back when Duan Lingtian killed the Tidal Temple's main hall master and took control of the Tidal Temple, he had deliberately asked around. Wu Hongqing didn't reveal that he had the 5 divine elements. Clearly Wu Hongqing wanted to keep them to himself. Mi Xian was probably the same. No one would be willing to casually tell others that they knew who had the 5 divine elements because they wanted to steal the other party's 5 divine elements. The 5 divine elements were rumored to be the key to becoming a supreme expert. Moreover, those who possessed the 5 divine elements were usually stronger. If they used them well, they would be unrivaled in the same realm. In fact, they might even be able to fight those of a higher realm. Elder Yi, I should be the one thanking you. Duan Lingtian said sincerely. Elder Yi, thank you for saving my master. At this moment, Feng Qingyang finally regained his senses and thanked Feng Qingyang. Elder Yi, thank you for saving my master. As soon as he finished speaking, he made his move without any warning. Swoosh. A sword ray streaked across the sky. At the same time, everyone from the Mystic Spirit Alliance, including the Vice Alliance leader of the Mystic Spirit Alliance and the Lesser God Emperor Tai Yuan, suddenly froze. In the next moment, swoosh, 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 the sword ray whistled past. Apart from Tai Yuan, who reacted in time and broke through the force that imprisoned him, Feng Qingyang only managed to sever one of his arms. Everyone else was killed by Feng Qingyang. The law of time? Sword Dao. Feng Qingyang casually pointed his finger, and a sword ray whistled past, killing Tai Yuan, who was trying to escape after his arm was severed. Then he looked at Feng Qingyang in surprise. At this moment, Feng Qingyang was also looking at Yi Qinfeng. This was because he realized that this Emperor God expert had also mastered the Sword Dao. It was not the rudimentary form of the Sword Dao, but the rudimentary form of the Sword Dao. Of course, compared to his Sword Dao, it was obviously much weaker. I didn't expect you to have such a high level of mastery of the Sword Dao in the Devata realm. Yi Qinfeng looked at Feng Qingyang and sighed emotionally. I, Yi Qinfeng, have walked for nearly 20,000 years, but I've never seen anyone who can surpass me in the Sword Dao. You're the first person to do so. A genius in the Sword Dao. This was Yi Qinfeng's first impression of Feng Qingyang. It was an unforgettable impression. Yi Qinfeng had once thought he might meet someone who had extraordinary attainments in the Sword Dao one day. However, he did not expect he would meet such a person outside the realms of gods. Moreover, this person was younger than him and had a lower cultivation base than him. At the Divine Emperor stage, it was easy for him to detect a person's bone age with his divine consciousness. Naturally, it was impossible to detect a person's bone age in such a manner. However, he was certain Feng Qingyang was only slightly older than 10,000 years old. You're also the first person I've seen who has mastered the Sword Dao apart from me and my disciple. At this moment, Feng Qingyang was looking at Yi Qinfeng with a surprised expression on his face. The Sword Dao. This sword Dao was completely different from the sword Dao he had mastered. Although his sword Dao was different from his disciple, Duanling Tian's sword Dao was different. Duanling Tian, who was standing at the side, frowned slightly before he relaxed his brows. He did not expect his master would reveal his attainments in the sword Dao in front of Elder Yi. After all, in the realms of gods, such a thing could easily cause trouble. In the realms of gods, there was no lack of narrow-minded experts. How would they feel if they found out Yi Qinfeng had mastered the sword Dao at such a young age while they had not? In the beginning, Duanling Tian subconsciously felt his master should not reveal his sword Dao. However, he soon changed his mind. With Yi Qinfeng's character, it would not be a big deal even if he found out. However, he was surprised to find out that Duanling Tian's sword Dao was not a secret. He did not expect the old ancestor of the hidden sword progeny in Chunyang school had mastered the sword Dao as well. Although the sword Dao contained in Yi Qinfeng's sword Dao was not as good as his, it was the real deal and not the embryonic form of the sword Dao. Yi Qinfeng was the first person he had met who had mastered the four Dao of heaven and earth since he arrived in the mystic gangland. Before this, he had never met anyone who had mastered the embryonic form of the four Dao of heaven and earth. Your master and disciple? Upon hearing Feng Qingyang's words, Yi Qinfeng smiled and said, "You're talking about Duanling Tian, right? Duanling Tian has only mastered the embryonic form of the sword Dao. It's not the real sword Dao in the realms of gods." The embryonic form of the sword Dao? Feng Qingyang was about to refute when Duanling Tian sent him a voice transmission to stop him. "Master, I didn't reveal the embryonic form of the sword Dao in the realms of gods." Feng Qingyang was not stupid. He quickly regained his senses when he heard Duanling Tian's words. I see. However, in the Devata realms, many people regard the rudimentary form of the sword Dao as the true sword Dao. I know. Yi Qinfeng nodded. I'm also from the Devata realms. At this moment, Feng Qingyang finally regained his senses. He smiled wryly and said, "Elder Yi, I forgot that you revealed your strength as a celestial emperor earlier. Those who don't come from the mundane realms or Devata realms will face certain restrictions when they return from the realms of gods." Duanling Tian did not expect Yi Qinfeng would take a liking to his master after he revealed his sword Dao to him. Yi Qinfeng followed them back to the heavenly palace of the solitary destructive heaven and stayed there for a long time before he was ready to leave. Based on what Yi Qinfeng knew, Yi Qinfeng had been talking to him about the sword Dao almost every day. Yi Qinfeng was not the only one who benefited from the discussions. Even his master had benefited a lot from it. Duanling Tian did not expect Yi Qinfeng and Feng Qingyang would become good friends after spending some time together. Qingyang. Before Yi Qinfeng left, he smiled at Feng Qingyang and said to Duanling Tian, "If you ever come to the mystic gangland, you can come to the Chunyang school and join the hidden sword progeny." Yi Qinfeng smiled and said, "As long as you are willing, I can even accept you as my junior brother, on behalf of my teacher." Chapter 3965. Big Brother Yi, I'll definitely look for you at the Chunyang school if I go to the land of profound handle. Feng Qingyang did not reject Yi Qinfeng's goodwill. When Yi Qinfeng saw this, he nodded. After bidding farewell to Feng Qingyang, he took out a space-piercing divine shuttle and left solitary destructive heaven. Even Yi Qinfeng himself had no idea which realm of gods he would end up in. Even before he left, he did not greet Duanling Tian. He only greeted Feng Qingyang because there was no need for him to greet Duanling Tian. Currently, Duanling Tian only had one of his clones in the heavenly palace of the solitary destructive heaven. Duanling Tian's true body was still in the Chunyang school. Yi Qinfeng was the old ancestor of the hidden sword lineage in the Chunyang school, one of the few void-pierce stage elders in the Chunyang school, and one of the mid-god emperors. He could see Duanling Tian at any time. There was no need for him to bid farewell to him. Big Brother Yi is a straightforward person. After Duanling Tian left, Feng Qingyang smiled at him. At the same time, a sword appeared in his hand. It was a high-grade divine sword that Duanling Tian gave him before he left. In Yi Qinfeng's eyes, even if Feng Qingyang did not lack divine weapons, he would definitely lack high-grade divine weapons. After all, he was someone who had never been to a plane of gods. As a matter of fact, Feng Qingyang was indeed lacking high-grade divine weapons. Although he had obtained the inheritance of a supreme powerhouse in the Azura Hell, there was no divine artifact or anything like that left behind for him in the inheritance. Otherwise, it would be impossible for the current him to only have this bit of strength. Of course, after Duanling Tian returned from the land of profound handle, Feng Qingyang would not lack high-grade divine weapons. However, since Yi Qinfeng gave him a high-grade divine weapon, he owed Yi Qinfeng a favor. Of course, it couldn't be considered a favor. During this period of time, he and Yi Qinfeng had been exchanging sword principles. Although both of them had received a certain amount of help, it was obvious that Yi Qinfeng had received more help. After all, although Yi Qinfeng had mastered the sword Dao, his sword Dao was not as good as Feng Qingyang's. This was also the main reason why he thought highly of Feng Qingyang and even said that he was willing to accept Feng Qingyang as his junior brother on behalf of his master. Feng Qingyang was qualified to make him do that. She is indeed straightforward. Duan Lingtian nodded, but at the same time he couldn't help but shake his head and smile. Master, if you go to Chunyang's school, I'm afraid you'll become many people's martial granduncle, and even be respected as ancestor. Although Elder Yi is young, his status in Chunyang school is very high. He belongs to the highest generation. In truth, Feng Qingyang only knew that Duan Lingtian was a celestial emperor from a sect in the realms of gods. However, he did not know Yi Qinfeng's status in the sect. After listening to Duan Lingtian, he finally realized Yi Qinfeng's status in Chunyang school. Master. Suddenly, Duan Lingtian seemed to recall something inside. You shouldn't have revealed your sword Dao so easily. There are many experts in the realms of gods, and many of them are narrow-minded. Of course, I'm not saying that Elder Yi is that kind of person. Although I haven't known Elder Yi for long, I can tell he's not that kind of person. It's just that there are many people we can't predict. Duan Lingtian said. I was in a hurry at the time. Feng Qingyang chuckled. Although Mi Xian didn't reveal your 5 divine elements, others still heard his last words. There are too many people and I don't think Big Brother Yi will be able to guess anything. On the contrary, I'm worried that people will make wild guesses if they spread the news. If I want to kill them, I can't do it without using my sword Dao. Feng Qingyang sighed. Master, you could have asked me to do it through voice transmission. However, now that I think about it, it's normal for you to send me a voice transmission because you were in a hurry. Duan Lingtian knew very well that since it had happened, there was no turning back. Based on the current situation, it was not necessarily a bad thing. At the very least, the patriarch of the hidden sword progeny in Chunyang school had befriended Yi Qinfeng. In the future, when Yi Qinfeng's master went to the Shengang land, he would be able to enter Chunyang school and become a patriarch. Forget it. What's done is done. Let it be. Feng Qingyang shook his head. Then he looked at Duan Lingtian and said with a smile, It's been a long time since the two of us got together. This is a good opportunity for us to catch up. Tell me what happened to you in the realms of gods over the years. I really didn't know you went to the realms of gods and became a divine emperor. You're even stronger than me now. Although Duan Lingtian's strength had surpassed Feng Qingyang's, Duan Lingtian did not feel uneasy. However, Feng Qingyang did not feel uncomfortable at all. Instead, he felt gratified. This time, Elder Yi came back with me and even took up a lot of Master's time. Indeed, the two of us, Master and disciple, didn't have time to chat. Now that he's gone, I should tell Master about my experiences in the past few decades. Following that, Feng Qingyang went to Duan Lingtian's cultivation place in the heavenly palace of the solitary destructive heaven. Duan Lingtian told Feng Qingyang about his experiences in the Shengang land. Since his master, Feng Qingyang, was aware that he possessed the 5 divine elements, Duan Lingtian did not hold back when he told Feng Qingyang about his experiences. Although Duan Lingtian's clones had returned to the Devata realms and the mundane realms, he did not meet his family because he did not want them to be separated again. Previously, he did not know when his clones would return since he did not think it would be easy to obtain the space-piercing divine shuttle. However, this time, since the space-piercing divine shuttle was not difficult to obtain, he wondered if it was time for him to meet his family. After all, as long as he had the space-piercing divine shuttle, he would be able to return whenever he wanted. Although it was difficult for Duan Lingtian to obtain more space-piercing divine shuttles through Qin Wuyang, according to Yi Qinfeng, the hidden sword progeny would be able to obtain a batch of space-piercing divine shuttles if they had enough time. As for the time that he spoke of, it was at most a few decades. Furthermore, he would be able to produce a batch every once in a while. Perhaps it's time for me to return and meet my family, Duan Lingtian sighed inwardly. Feng Qingyang listened to Duan Lingtian's recount of his experiences in the Shengang land. Initially, his expression was calm. However, when Duan Lingtian said he was in danger, his expression changed drastically. Naturally, during this process he had also analyzed some things with Duan Lingtian. For example, Duan Xiaoyu, who suddenly appeared in front of Duan Lingtian and acted affectionately toward Duan Lingtian, said, "He has the same surname as you and he calls you Big Brother. He even said you look like his big brother." It sounds like a coincidence, but is it really a coincidence? You said it yourself. The way she looks at you doesn't look like she's looking at someone who looks like her brother. Instead, it's like she's looking at her brother. Let's make a bold guess. Is it possible that this has something to do with the law of time? You should know that there are celestial weapons that contain the law of time in the Devata realms. The flow of time in the celestial weapons is different from the flow of time in the Devata realms. However, the flow of time in the celestial weapons is only effective for those with a low cultivation base. If a person with a high cultivation base enters the celestial weapons, the flow of time in the celestial weapons will be affected. Now that I think about it, you've cultivated in the Seven Treasures Exquisite Pagoda with Hualao as the soul of the celestial weapons artifact. You should know about it, Feng Qingyang said. Duan Lingtian was not stupid. His eyes widened when he heard Feng Qingyang mentioning the law of time. Master, are you saying my encounter with Duan Xiaoyu might be related to the flow of time? That's right. Feng Qingyang nodded. You should know that I obtained the Supreme Powerhouse's legacy. It's the legacy left behind by a Supreme Powerhouse who's skilled in the law of time. Although he didn't leave me anything, he left behind a lot of useful information. According to his description, when one uses the law of time to a certain extent and has a special environment, one might be able to travel through time and space for a short period of time. Naturally, it's only a short period of time. Could it be that, at some point in the future, you inadvertently traveled through time and space to a point in the past where you didn't even exist, such as 700 years ago? Did you meet her at that time? Did she acknowledge you as her big brother? It had to be said that Feng Qingyang's guess was extremely bold and exaggerated. It was so audacious that Duan Lingtian found it hard to believe. Is this possible? Although the probability is very low, it's possible. Even the Supreme Powerhouse who left me the inheritance didn't experience traveling through time and space. What he said is only his speculation. Feng Qingyang said. It was precisely because of this that he made such a bold guess. Whether it's true or not, we'll find out in the future. Duan Lingtian's eyes glinted. Although he did not think it was possible, when he thought about how the flow of time in the Seven Treasures Exquisite Pagoda was different from the outside world, he was certain it was true. It was only after he arrived in the Devata realms that he learned the Seven Treasures Exquisite Pagoda had different effects on those who had not become celestials and those who had become celestials. Moreover, the more powerful a celestial was, the less they could enjoy the Seven Treasures Exquisite Pagoda's ability to slow down time. Previously, when Duan Lingtian met Hualao, the artifact spirit of the Seven Treasures Exquisite Pagoda, Hualao had told him that the Seven Treasures Exquisite Pagoda's ability to slow down time was created to nurture juniors with low cultivation bases. Yes, I'll find out in the future. Feng Qingyang nodded. Then, as though he had recalled something, he asked, "Have you met your family during these 2 times you've been back? I thought you were with them. I didn't expect you to go to the realms of gods." Upon hearing Feng Qingyang's words, Duan Lingtian fell silent for a moment before he said, "I had some misgivings earlier, but they're gone now. I'll meet them later." Chapter 3966. Is it because of the space-piercing divine shuttle? Feng Qingyang asked with a smile on his face. Yes. Duan Lingtian nodded. Previously, I obtained a space-piercing divine shuttle by chance. It was only after I went to Chunyang School that I realized the crafting of the space-piercing divine shuttle isn't that difficult. Now, as long as I want to, I can get some space-piercing divine shuttles from Chunyang School. He had told Feng Qingyang about the divine void-piercing shuttle. Therefore, Feng Qingyang was aware that the divine void-piercing shuttle was a unique divine weapon that was not exclusive to the natives of the realms of gods. Little Tian, do you have any extra space-piercing divine shuttles with you? Feng Qingyang asked Duan Lingtian as his eyes gleamed. Duan Lingtian narrowed his eyes slightly when he heard Feng Qingyang's question. Master, are you planning to go to the realms of gods as well? Yes. Feng Qingyang nodded. He did not deny it. Master. Duan Lingtian smiled wryly. Why don't you wait until you've broken through to the Divine Emperor stage before you consider going to the realms of gods? The realms of gods aren't that safe. Even if you plan to go to Chunyang School with the space-piercing divine shuttle, you might not be able to reach the Chunyang School's profound gangland. Even if you're lucky enough to arrive at the profound handle land, You might not necessarily appear in the Eastern Ridge Prefecture where the Pure Sun sect is located, and on the way to the Pure Sun sect, you might encounter an accident at any time. Duan Lingtian voiced his concerns. Feng Qingyang smiled faintly when he heard Duan Lingtian's words. I've thought of all these. However, I don't plan to go to Chunyang School when I go to the realms of gods. If I go to Chunyang School, I'm sure brother you won't let me be an ordinary disciple. If I were an ordinary person, I'd be more than happy to have a big tree like him to rely on. But I'm different. I don't want to rely on him, nor do I want to rely on anyone else. I Feng Qingyang want to walk my own path. Even if I go to a realm of gods, no matter which realm of gods the divine void-piercing shuttle sends me to, I'll stay there and carve out a world of my own. As for the divine emperor realm, with the divine pellet you gave me I can easily break through in a few years. After breaking through to the celestial emperor stage I'll head to the realms of gods. Naturally, I'll leave a law of earth clone in the heavenly palace of the solitary destructive heaven. Feng Qingyang said. Duan Lingtian knew very well that his master was a very opinionated person. Otherwise he wouldn't be where he was today. Regardless of whether it was his rise from the mundane realm to the Saint Province realm, his domineering rise in the solitary destructive heaven to become a heavenly emperor, or his narrow escape from the Azura hell to obtain the inheritance of a supreme powerhouse, one could see that his master did not lack courage and determination. It would be cruel to keep such a person trapped in one place. Master, I don't have a space-piercing divine shuttle with me right now. Other than my clone using a space-piercing divine shuttle, I gave the rest to Elder Yi. Once you've broken through to the Celestial Emperor stage I should be able to obtain more divine void-piercing shuttles. At that time I'll return with another Law of Earth clone and give you the divine void-piercing shuttles. Duan Lingtian said to Feng Qingyang. All right. Feng Qingyang's eyes lit up. Then he smiled and said, since you've decided to reunite with your family you should hurry. I'll take this opportunity to cultivate and break through to the Celestial Emperor stage as soon as possible. I've been looking forward to going to the realms of gods for a long time. When Feng Qingyang mentioned the realms of gods, a hint of killing intent flashed in the depths of his eyes. Back then, he had entered the Azura Hell because he was hunted down by a powerhouse from the Divine Offering Land. Although the powerhouse's strength was restricted, he was still able to force his way into the Azura Hell. In the end he had no choice but to flee to the Azura Hell. Although it was a blessing in disguise he did not feel grateful to the powerhouse at all. All he felt was killing intent. Moreover, the powerhouse had attacked him because of his disciple, Duan Lingtian. Whether it was to avenge himself or to eliminate the threat to his disciple, Duan Lingtian, he had no intention of letting the powerhouse who had attacked him go. It would be difficult for him to catch up to the powerhouse in the Devata realms. Unless he could go to the realms of gods. However, since the spatial passages between the realms of gods and the Devata realms were closed, he could not go to the realms of gods even if he wanted to. Now that he knew there was a divine artifact like the divine void-piercing shuttles, he was eager to seize the opportunity to go to the realms of gods. Little Tian, send your Law of Space clone to reunite with your family. Send another Law of Space clone to bring a divine void-piercing shuttles as soon as possible. Over the years, I've made some new discoveries in the place where the Supreme Powerhouse left his legacy behind. After the place was destroyed, there were many scryer recordings of the Law of Time. I've been immersed in them for decades. Not only has my cultivation base improved rapidly, but my comprehension of the Law of Time has also surpassed the Law of Destruction that I was most proficient in. Send another Law of Space clone here. I'll share my insights with you. I'm sure it'll be beneficial to your Law of Time as well. Although Feng Qingyang was in a hurry to break through to the Divine Emperor realm, he still wanted to help Duan Lingtian improve his Law of Time. All right. Duan Lingtian felt warmth in his heart when he heard Feng Qingyang's words. He chatted with Feng Qingyang for a while longer before he left. When Duan Lingtian left, Feng Qingyang also returned to his place of cultivation. After returning to the mundane realm where his family had settled down, Duan Lingtian, who had decided to reunite with his family, could not help but feel a sense of homesickness. He had felt the same way before. However, after he decided not to show himself that time, the feeling of homesickness disappeared. This time, however, he was prepared to show himself and reunite with his family. Father, mother. The first people Duan Lingtian went to see were Duan Ruffing and Li Ro. When they saw Duan Lingtian, they were naturally overjoyed and asked about his well-being. Li Ro kept asking Duan Lingtian about his experiences in the realms of gods. With his past experience, Duan Lingtian did not mention anything dangerous. He did not want his mother, Li Ro, to worry. "Mother, my journey was very smooth. First, I met a powerhouse from a God Emperor sect. When he saw my cultivation base at such a young age, he took me to a sect called the Heaven Illumination sect. After that, I performed outstandingly in the Heaven Illumination sect and was lucky enough to join a powerful sect called the Chunyang school. Now I, your son, am a godly emperor. With my current cultivation base, I can rule over some of the more remote places in the realms of gods." Duan Lingtian only revealed the good news and left out the bad news. Duan Ruffing sat at the side and listened to Duan Lingtian's story. He shook his head and sighed from time to time. He knew his son's journey in the realms of gods would not be so smooth. Moreover, how could he become a god emperor in such a short time? Duan Lingtian would not believe his son did not encounter any dangers in such a short time. He would not believe his son did not become a god king and a god emperor. When one's strength rose rapidly, it was always accompanied by great risks. Duan Lingtian, who had experienced this before, knew this very well. Let's not talk about anything else. Back when he was in the mundane plane, it was precisely because the powerful soul that possessed his body had controlled his body for many years that he was able to regain control of his body after many years and possess extraordinary strength. Otherwise, even if he was considered a genius in a small place, he would not have been able to achieve so much in such a short time. Duan Lingtian knew his son was only saying this to comfort his wife. He could only sigh at his son's thoughtfulness. At the same time, he made up his mind to ask his son what he had been through all these years when they were alone. He wanted to know the truth. After spending some time with his parents, Duan Lingtian was urged to meet his wife, Li Fei, and his children. Duan Lingtian went to see Li Fei first. When the couple saw each other again, they hugged for a long time. Li Fei was so emotional that tears streamed down her cheeks. However, since it was only a clone, Duan Lingtian did not do anything that crossed the line. He did not intend to do anything because he found it strange and uncomfortable. He decided to wait for his main body to return before he did anything that could not be explained. Li Fei was not the only one who felt the same way. Huan felt the same way as well. After spending some time with Li Fei, Duan Lingtian went to see Huan had not changed at all. She was still as beautiful and alluring as before. When she saw Duan Lingtian, she laid quietly in his arms and told him how much she had missed him over the years. Duan Lingtian listened to her quietly. Huan cultivation base was already high to begin with. After years of hard work, she was now a demigod. She was only a step away from becoming a god. After spending some time with Huan Duan Lingtian went to see Feng Qianwu, his children Han Xuanai, Feng Wudao, and the others. They were overjoyed when they learned that Duan Lingtian would stay by their side with his clones from now on. My clones can stay here and guide them in their cultivation. Apart from that, I can also obtain cultivation resources from the Devata realms through the Tidal Temple. As for the cultivation resources in the realms of gods, I can use my clones to deliver them to them. With this thought in mind, a bright smile appeared on Duan Lingtian's face. It's a good thing I'm not a native of the realms of gods. Otherwise, I wouldn't be able to form a law clone. At this moment, Duan Lingtian felt that it was indeed a good thing to have a law clone. After some time passed, Duan Lingtian, who had obtained the 2 space-piercing divine shuttles, did not hesitate. He quickly formed a Law of Time clone and returned to the heavenly palace of the solitary destructive heaven in one of the Devata realms. After handing the space-piercing divine shuttles to Feng Qingyang, Duan Lingtian returned to his master, Feng Qingyang, and patiently listened to Feng Qingyang's explanation of the Law of Time. You're tuning in to the Han Li's Wuxia Adventures YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.